Hey, good evening and welcome to the Jinn&Tonic show on Friday, the 15th of February. A warm welcome to all of you who are viewing. A warm welcome to my, as always, co-host, Stop Spamming. And we have a new panelist guest here tonight. And it's Sydney, who's an atheist from South Africa. Fancy that. So there's three of us originally who are atheists from South Africa.
It's not a conspiracy.
Welcome, Sydney.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You want to just share a bit about you, because nobody on this channel, I know you from other places, but nobody here would probably know very much about you. Maybe a few would, but yeah, share about who you are,
sure.
or whatever you feel.
Okay, I'm an atheist who does not buy into the concept that God is even possible. So in my view, everything is natural, existence is natural, and is infinite.
Okay, so you hold to sort of an infinite universe going back in time and probably forward in time,
or multiple, or whatever,
or a multiverse.
Whatever happened before playing time,
yeah,
was natural.
Yeah,
going back to infinity.
So just share with us quickly before we get into the show. You say God is impossible. Share why you say that, because most atheists like myself, depending on the claim, I wouldn't outright say it's impossible. So just share what you mean by that.
Well, I kind of just said it, because the state of existence, of energy and matter, and no matter in what form, whether it's in this universe or this multi-universes or whatever, it's all natural and it's infinite. So with that said, there is no need, no place for a creator God for something that's natural and infinite.
Okay, I get what you mean. It doesn't, to my mind, again, you can correct me, just an interesting point. I agree that a God wouldn't be necessary in that scenario, but that wouldn't necessarily, in my mind, and tell me if I'm thinking incorrectly, that wouldn't preclude a God as being impossible. It could be that God is existing alongside this and just watching the whole show unveil, but has got no involvement whatsoever.
Yeah, well, that's just a human story, a man-made story.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems to me it doesn't preclude it by saying it's impossible, just because we have a natural.
Oh, it's absolutely impossible.
Oh, you're saying it is?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe we can share
that's why I ridicule religion as much as I can, because it's based on nonsense, on rational nonsense.
Well, we'll certainly possibly get into a little bit of that tonight. So with that, Stops, over to you, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to do the introduction a bit, because it's I don't know why. It's still important that we tell people what we do and what we don't do. I don't know why this is necessary, but it is. Number one thing is, an atheist is simply somebody who does not believe that there is any kind of evidence for the existence of gods, okay? An atheist does not hold any kind of belief regarding anything. And that is it. Like Sydney just said, because this reminded me of this. If I'm a naturalist, I have certain beliefs, absolutely, but this has nothing to do with my non-belief regarding gods. So if somebody were to now disprove evolution, I would say good on you. But it wouldn't, or if somebody would disprove it without being able to provide an alternative, I would say, okay, well, it's a shame. It was a nice theory while it lasted, but it wouldn't change my attitude towards gods. And that is something that people need to understand, right? So what we do is we address Islam. We don't look at other gods, not normally. We focus on Islam because that's where we know our stuff. Like I'm very bad when it comes to Bible and Bhagavad Gita and other texts. Now we critique. Okay, we don't attack. We critique. We use facts, reality, reasoning, and we condemn categorically any abuse, any oppression, any slavery, any violence, anything in that category. And we embrace free speech and criticism, factual and constructive criticism. Now, we have a little bit of a nuance here, where I'm somebody who embraces absolute total free speech, because I think human beings should be responsible for how they react to words, and I should not have to go and couch this in any which way. Now, the main thing is, we are all decent human beings. Okay, we all have a decent streak in us. It's just that in some people this gets either vibed out or traumatized out of them, or I don't know what. But in the beginning, I maintain we're all decent. And this is my outlook. This is what I think. I will not trust a human being right from the beginning, but I will allow any human being the benefit of the doubt to that they are decent. Okay, so the Jinn&Tonic show has the intention, and always has been, about bringing facts to address an ideology, to confront Islam with reality, to engage in dialogue, to discuss differences in beliefs. And how do we do that? Well, we react to claims. We don't attack. Like, I rarely make claims. I look at the Quran, I look at the way that Muslims talk to me, and then I react to that. But we don't attack individual Muslims or Muslims in general. We criticize the claims around bad ideas in Islam, the ideology. Yeah, sure, we expose those who lie and deceive, who are willfully ignorant and corrupt, and of course, and we educate those who never had the benefit of a scientific education, and yet they are the ones who confront us with false claims based within science. Sure, we do that. But it's not that I am out there to make a Muslim look bad just because they're a Muslim. Now, instead of being strictly divisive, we try and build bridges, even though, okay, I admit, especially me, we often fail by finding commonality. We try and find commonalities and positive notions, as well as applying logic reasoning. And I have to admit that sometimes I'm strident, sometimes I'm frustrated because I've heard something, 50 million times. And I think to myself, come on, guys, this is the minimum. I go and study Islam for years and years and years before I go out and talk about Islam. So I think the minimum courtesy that you should have is go and learn like what atheist is, instead of saying you atheists believe everything is by chance and the universe is by nothing. Please don't do that. I mean, why do I go and learn about Islam? I go and read all the books, all the texts, everything as much as possible before I dare go and make say something about this. But why is it that so many Muslims come here and make real shit arguments, and then they still think we should take them seriously? So that is the kind of approach that I have, and I think I'm speaking for the others here, but I don't think I'm misrepresenting them. So we're looking for good arguments, and who knows, maybe someone can bring up a convincing good reason to believe that there is this powerful supernatural entity somewhere out there, although I must admit I strongly doubt it.
Good. Welcome, Thunderous. Thunderous is our Christian. Meet Sydney. Sydney is Ashkenazi on the thing there. Thunderous is a Christian. He's in there with 3 atheists from South Africa. So in a sense, he's in the lion's den. We're not debating Christianity tonight. We are obviously critiquing Islam, and Thunderous is a fellow critic of Islam, specifically what the Quran and Hadith say. So good evening to you, my good sir.
Thank you very much indeed.
Good. All right. So we'll go straight into some crazy comments here, just to read a few of those, because it's always interesting. We haven't done it for a little while. So we'll do a few of those. You guys can obviously share a few thoughts on that, and then we'll get straight into the Quran. In the meantime, Stops and Thunderous, if you guys can remind me the verse that we're going to start on. Obviously, I was with you, but only partially last week. So just have a think about it.
I think we're starting from verse Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 110, or sorry, 100.
Yeah. Correct.
What's it? 110.
110. Yeah.
Okay, we'll start at 110. Okay, that's cool. Let me present this to everybody. And here we go. A few crazy comments. Here's from a Muslim commenter on Facebook. I'm so happy because Allah created hell, Jannah, and so you who always insulted Islam, you can do as much as you can, but remember that death and punishment, you cannot run from it. Ah, yes, the religion of peace and the wonderful necessity of punishing people for eternity.
Let's make it
challenging it, yes. These things. And again, there's many of these comments. We just select a few that we can pick up here. So I can't remember what this one is for. You prick, where are you going? Where are you? I want to kill you. I don't care going to jail. You won't be alive.
No, Rob, it's you prick, where are you? I want to kill you. I don't care.
Yes, thank you. Now, I think I don't know who this was. I can't remember if this was directed to me or to you or who it was, but there we go. Again, these peaceful fellows here wanting to engage in intellectual dialogue, not.
Well, it shows the weakness of Islam. Okay, it shows how weak really the arguments are. That they cannot argue anything. They can't argue their way out of whatever, doesn't matter. So they immediately go to violence. I don't know why so many of these people do. If it's not I'm gonna fuck your mother, then it's I'm gonna kill you. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean that's obviously partly what Muhammad did, isn't it? So they're following that example, and they see it around the world, and some of them are encouraged to do that. So, how dare you mock or question Muhammad? He's like my family. Imagine if we always hear the argument. Imagine if it was your mother, what would you do? Well, I would respond to them that with an argument or suggest that they give me evidence for whatever claim they're making. But of course, as you point out, there's an emotional thing here, and you don't see this as far as I know, you don't see this in other religions, or not many anyway. I can't think of anything where somebody wants to kill you for saying something they don't like.
Well, you don't, because if you was to mock, say, anything of the Bible, for instance, and if someone was to mock a Christian, say, and the Christian wanted to respond with some kind of violent rhetoric or action, then immediately he reduces himself to being a non-Christian, then, won't he? That's the point. But they can't do that with Islam, because they're imitating the Prophet Muhammad, who had all his critics and such executed if they challenged his authority. So they're only following in kind.
Well, that's the thing. They've got an example to follow, haven't they? Certain people he didn't like for saying certain things. So, yeah. Oh, and this is the ones that you got, Stops. And this was a debate with Lawrence Krauss and Hamza Torts. It's quite an old debate, about 3 or 4 or 5 years old now. I can't remember when it was done.
Yeah, I don't know why it's coming up in my suggested list at the moment all the time.
So this was done in London. So Krauss came, the interesting little side story. Krauss came to do this. It was a debate organized by a Muslim group in a university in London. So he came into the room and he saw that they'd segmented male and female. And there's still background footage of this online if you go find it. And he said, no, I'm not having this. People should be able to mingle here. We're in, the UK. This is an open society. And he wanted to walk out. And they're like, no, okay. And they sort of placated him. And then he sat down and obviously had the debate, because he was literally going to walk out, because they had it, segmented men and women only. And so obviously the debate went ahead, and obviously his focus is on cosmology, which of course Tortoise had no answer to. Tortoise brought up a few things about Islam and philosophy, and that's not Krauss's strong point, so he didn't necessarily respond. So they all thought that Tortoise won the argument. But as far as cosmology was going, and you talked to him about this, didn't you, Stop? So he chatted to you prior. Obviously it was like Tortoise was getting a lesson. I don't think he learned anything specifically, but here are some of the comments from this particular video. Does Lawrence Krauss is suggesting that homosexuality will ensure the continuity of human race?
Yeah.
Terrible. I mean, obviously English isn't their first language, or grammar, or learning to write coherence in sentences is a battle for some people. But I don't even know where this came up in the debate. So there we go. But as you I think we've pointed this out before, some Muslims, and I want to welcome Benny. So Benny, welcome to the show. You are a Muslim. You're in the lion's den here. You have 3 atheists and a Christian, but we're going to be polite, as polite as we normally are with you. So
speak for yourself.
Well, I'll be reasonably polite. I'll let Sydney and Thunderous and Stops give it to you. I know you can take it anyway. So
good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Good evening. I have a thick skin. So you can critique all you want. You can critique the Quran, the Prophet, everything. But please don't insult. That when we insult each other, it's not really good conversation.
We won't insult you, Ben.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're a regular on this panel now, you see. So we're grateful that you're here. We've actually got a Muslim that has decided to come along the panel and defend his faith, which is something.
Yes, and
we've got Arab Millennial. Arab Millennial wants to come on.
I think that is Benny. Is that you, Arab Millennial?
No.
Oh, that's somebody else. Okay, I will. As soon as we finish the comments here. Oh yes, I think I know who it is. As soon as we finish the crazy comments, I'll bring in him. I've got another message on Facebook I'll respond to in a moment.
Well, we've got Fruitful on there, but Fruitful, I don't understand. Okay, I'm not supposed to. Okay, Benny, what should I call a moron if I'm polite?
You can call him, please. You can give advice, and advice is please think twice or think three times before you say something or chat something. That's the best advice I can give you.
Yeah, but we've told him so many times that there is evidence in the form of hadiths which have been classified by Islamic scholars as sahih. So they are not sunan or hasan or daif or anything. They are sahih. Okay, and these hadiths very, very clearly say that Muhammad commanded his men to enjoy raping female captives. Now, can anybody say that a man who does that is of the highest moral value?
Should we come back to? Should we come back to that? Hang on, guys. Let's finish.
This is just a quick question.
No. Okay. No, we don't accept that. You can ask every Muslim. Not one Muslim will tell you that he conducting such acts. Rape is capital punishment in Islam. If you rape somebody, then is a capital punishment.
But we've been through this discussion. I have shown him, I think, 10 of these hadiths which all corroborate one another, which all say the same thing. There's no way out of it. But I don't want to go into this discussion because we've had the discussion. I have provided the evidence. I have advised him of this. I have shown him that this exists. I have shown him these are sahih hadiths. I have shown him that this is valid. And still he says the opposite. And that for me is moronic. Okay, so I don't understand what else I can still do, what else I can call somebody who says, well, yes, the ground is wet. Yes, there is water coming from the clouds. Yes, there are dark clouds, but it's not raining. You know, it doesn't.
One final point. Final point. No real Muslim will tell you that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, commanded such thing. No real Muslim will tell you. So I don't know where.
Well, they have no option. I mean, then you have to lie. I'm sorry, but if you're honest, okay. But I don't want to go there. This is just that I can't understand how somebody. Then don't make these claims. Okay, then don't make the claim that Muhammad is the highest value, morality giver, role model in the whole history of the planet. It doesn't work. Then shut up about it. Then don't make these claims. It's very easy. Okay, but I didn't want to cite it. I just saw this comment, and it irritates the shit out of me if I see these people who are saying the same thing over and over and over after we have schooled, educated, and we have provided the evidence, and they still say, nope, doesn't matter. Okay,
right. Let's get back to it. Okay, so Kraus obviously had this comment here. Some Muslims are obsessed about homosexuality for some reason. They keep talking about it. There we go. Right.
And they don't understand that by saying, I do not condemn it, he is actively supporting it, and he is saying that homosexuality is the cure for all mankind. He never said anything like that.
No, he didn't.
All he says is we should not condemn it, and we should go away from the view that we had 100 years ago, that this is an illness, that you need therapy or something. We should accept it. We should allow this. We should take the people who like their own gender, and we should just go and treat them like normal human beings. It doesn't mean that now 100% of all men are only going to fall in love with other men. We're talking about 8, 9, maybe 10%, and that's it. And I think humanity can handle that. And I think I'd rather prefer a loving relationship between two people than the relationships I sometimes see with husband and wife, which we have in the neighborhood now, because a Muslim is beating his wife. And now she came running to my wife because she's trained in this. And they had a conversation about this. And now we're trying to get her into a safe house. So I'd rather have two men in a loving relationship than this.
Cool. All right, let's move on. The incest question really got Kraus. I can't remember what was said there. So obviously,
what was said is very easy. That he says, what is your the whole thing was that sources came up with this idea that we condemn incest because it's a morally bad thing. And then Krauss said something, sorry, Professor Krauss said, I am not sure that it is. That's all he said. I am not sure that it is. It's a, something that you should condemn. Because, and then when Sotis, then there was a big howl in the in the audience, because they didn't understand what this implied. He implied only that he is not sure that every time you have an incestuous relationship that it should immediately be condemned, and he qualified it and he explained it. And he said, if you have a brother and a sister where there is no offspring, where there's absolutely nothing, who are we to condemn it? Now, I would not go and have sex with my father or with my sister or anybody, because I find it, I don't know, I have this repulsion, I don't know what you call it, instinct or something built in, so that I don't have that. But I will not go and condemn somebody else who does so if there is no oppression, if there is no violence, if there is no coercion. If two people want to engage in a sexual relationship, they should by all means do that. It is not for me to judge others, as long as both people are doing this and it's consensual and there are no negative consequences. And that is exactly what Kruas said in this during this debate. And the Muslims there, the audience, did not understand it. And like this guy, Haris Sajwani, same. The incest question really got Kruas. No, number one, there was no question. And number two, it didn't get him. He was very open, very honest, like any lenient, any modern human being should be.
Cool. Let's move on to the next one. Obviously, Krauss didn't come prepared. He just looked bad compared to well, again, I don't know what you mean by that. If by that you mean he doesn't have a deep knowledge of the Quran, that's maybe fair. But I mean, just a generalized statement, it doesn't mean anything unless you can be more specific. But these are the sort of comments you get. It's just like a generalized comment based on nothing that we can see here. Typical sort of response. And then I think, I don't know if this is the last one, bring him to Dr. Zakir Naik. Obviously, this person can't spell. Now, for those who don't know, Sydney might know it because he's new to the panel and so forth, but Zakir Naik is this.
I'm very familiar with this.
You know who it is, eh?
I think he's a Malaysian or Indonesian.
Yeah. I mean, he's...
No, he's in Indian. Brother makes a good point. Good goal, yes.
He's a very fast talker.
Yeah. He knows
He's a very skilled con man.
Yeah. He's a clown.
He's a clown, exactly.
I mean, his claim to fame is obviously that he's memorized the Quran and he can cite the verses off the top of his head. But ask him anything about science. There's a famous video where a young Indian guy talked about evolution and science, and he had no clue, absolutely clueless on that. But anyway, some people, like presumably this commenter, think that Dr. Zakir Naik is
Naik, N-A-I.
Yeah. N-I-A-I-K, I think is how it's supposed to be spelled. Anyway, somebody thinks that he's a good debater, but apparently he doesn't really debate, and especially if he knows who who the person is challenging, he'll find some reason not to. So he doesn't go up. Apparently, he doesn't go up against anybody.
He's very similar to William Lane Craig. He just spews it all out.
Ooh, no, don't. Okay, now I have to protect Dr. William Lane Craig.
No, in terms of presentation, in terms of how he presents it, he just goes.
Yeah. He just talks nonstop. Yeah, I mean, he comes there prepared with whatever he's going to say. I mean,
definitely, but he just does not stop.
Yeah, he goes. That's for sure.
There's one thing I want to add here, because I find this so weak. When somebody says, bring him to Dr. Zakir Naik so that he, so that he can sort him out, because I'm too stupid to, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not saying, but there's somebody who can do this. I'm too stupid to learn anything. But if you take him to Zakir Naik, then he will sort this out. And this is what is so weak, that the people are hiding behind others. They think Naik is some great philosophical debater or something like this. And this is not the case. And they think that they don't need to do anything. They follow their leaders, and they take on this Naik guy, and they think that he's some sort of a scholar. And they say, well, let him handle it. Why should I learn anything about the Quran? Why should I go read the Hadith? No, this is exactly what Benny says. That's why Muslims will not even know that these hadiths, even though they are authentic, even though they are in all classical literature in Islam, they don't know about them. And I can't even be angry with this. I can't even, judge them for this, because it's, unfortunately, this is one of the things.
I think when a Muslim turns around and mentions these scholars for dollars, it's like an immediate expose as to how stupid and ignorant they are. As soon as they say Zakir-Naik, it's like, you've just proven to me how stupid you are. You've just proven to me you're nothing more than a mere Muslim by rote. The fact that you've just said that. Because even now, by today's standards, these scholars for dollars are so outdated in their line of reasoning. These Muslims are yet to catch up. But it's like I've said before, they rely, their dad goes down to the halal shop, gets £1.50 of leg mince, and says, "Oh, I'll have that Zakir-Naik DVD," where he's debating some Mickey Mouse token scholar, Christian or Hindu or a Sikh, takes it and watches it and thinks, well, my message is our victory, and I'm going to plagiarize those arguments the next time I see a non-Muslim on the, when I'm out and about at work. It's the same old story.
Yeah, but the thing is, what is so sad here is, look at this comment with the incest with Krauss. They go and they say, well, like a little child, he can't handle incest because he made a comment about it. But in Islam, incest is allowed. Yeah. This is the funny thing. They don't look in their own backyard first and realize, oh, we shouldn't go here, because we are the ones who are guilty of incest here, because the Quran allows it. So we shouldn't talk about this. There's so many things like this. It doesn't matter which argument you take. There are so many, like when Dawa Man made this video that you can drink your dad's sperm. My reply was, well, a Muslim can drink camel urine. Excuse me. Drinking dad's sperm might be emotionally bad for you, but it doesn't kill you. It's just protein, but there's nothing wrong with that. But if you drink camel urine, you can have quite disastrous effects from that. Muslims will not go and look in their backyard.
Well, when you drink too much camel urine, it's called MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, and it's unique to the Arabian Peninsula as a byproduct of drinking camel urine. As far as incest is concerned, when you look at the NHS statistics as far as the byproducts of inbreeding and with children that have got disabilities as a result of inbreeding, the greatest majority by far, considering the small minority that the Islamic representation is in England, comes from the Muslim population in England. Because of their inbreeding, they are the greatest contributor to children born with defects as a result of Islamic inbreeding. So the statistics are not in their favor as far as incest is concerned.
Okay, so with that said, I want to just welcome in a couple of extra panelists. I want to welcome in Arab Millennial. I don't know, Arab, if you want to just introduce yourself, tell us how obviously I know your name on Facebook, but I'm not going to publicize that unless you're okay with that. So you tell us how you'd like to be addressed, and then just sort of briefly tell us what sort of Muslim you are, and welcome to the show. And then we'll also bring in Why So Religious, who's another atheist. So there we go. Go ahead, sir.
Sure. Thank you very much. So yeah, so basically hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So my background is Moroccan. I was born and bred in the UK. My parents are Moroccan, and I run a website called ArabMillennial.net, which is it's a political and sociological website about Arab society and the Arab diaspora in the world. So I come from a politics background. It's what I've studied and where I've worked. So my knowledge is not around theology in terms of the intricacies of what the Qur'an is and isn't saying, but it's more about society, Arab society, Arab history, and Arab politics. That's my background, essentially.
Okay, excellent. And how should we address you? Is it Arab, AM? Is it the name on Facebook? What is best for you?
If you, for now, not because of yourselves, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
Because due to other people, if you could just address me as Oz, then that would be great.
Okay, Oz, it is no problem at all. Oz, just what sort of Muslim? Because I got this sense when we were, saw some of your comments that you were more sort of Sufi, but I may be mistaken. Are you Sunni or what's your sort of bracketing, if you would call yourself something?
I would say essentially I'm quite Sufi, so I believe I thought long and hard about my religious views. I obviously there is, with everyone, there's an element of bias. So being born into a Muslim family is going to make you more likely to be a Muslim, and being born into a non-Muslim family is the same, right? But I tried my best to question my own views when I was younger, and my parents encouraged that as well. And I reached the conclusion that I do believe in God. I sincerely believe in God. And then from the religious texts that were available to me, I felt like Islam resonated more with me. So, but I don't take it literally. I would say that I'm probably the antithesis of a Salafi, essentially.
Yes, yeah, we have discussed, we have chatted to a few other Sufis, and they sort of take a much more metaphorical, esoteric view of the Quran. So it'll be interesting as we go through some of the verses tonight, just to get your view, to get Benny's view, obviously the rest of the panel as well. And also, good evening, Why So Religious? How are you, my good sir? If you are there.
I'm well, thank you.
There you are. Good evening.
Hey, guys.
So good. Okay, so it is a bit of a loaded panel. We have 4 atheists, a Christian, and 2 Muslims. So again, welcome. Thanks, guys. We'll be as courteous as we can be. We are adults, so we're not going to tap dance and, lick anybody's boots, but we're probably not going to be swearing and doing any of that sort of stuff. But we may have a robust discussion as we go through.
Before we start, Rob,
go ahead.
I did ask.
Yes, go ahead.
Previously, to make a point with reference before we start today's show. I want to address perhaps an attitude or an opinion that prevails to the listeners about my presence on the panel as to how, with atheists, could somebody who believes in intelligent design or indeed believes the Bible could side with atheists with reference to commenting on the Quran and Islam. And it's not a question.
Nobody's perfect.
No.
Cheeky.
Just had to say something, didn't he?
Yeah.
Please practice reticence. The point being, the whole point of my presence on the panel is that I don't think you have to have some kind of interfaith in order to speak against Islam or have an opinion against Islam or to speak about Islam. The atheists will come with their pretext or their angle or their narrative as to why they question Islam, its writings, its sources, and indeed the Prophet and the presence of Islam in non-Muslim communities. But my attitude is, as an ex-Muslim, I am an ex-Muslim, I am an outspoken apostate of Islam, so I do have a knowledge of Islam, but also I'm coming against Islam from the biblical narrative, holding true that the Bible has 100% integrity. So whilst I'm not siding with the atheist as far as doctrines are concerned, I am siding with the atheist in questioning Islam, its sources, its prophet, and its presence in non-Islamic communities. So that it's a bit like I can agree with the Muslim that cheesecake tastes nice and Tottenham Hotspur is the best football club in the country, but that doesn't mean to say I'm going to agree that Allah is the one and only true God.
Yeah, and I think you'd get some dispute over whether Tottenham is the best anyway, but I know you're a huge football fan. And look, it'd be the same if the Muslims ran a show, we would come on and probably we would critique, Christianity. We'd be on, quote unquote, the same page in terms of critiquing Christianity. So I appreciate that. So with that said, I mean, obviously, let's get into some verses here and we can have a look.
Oh, should I start? Oh, because I got a positive, the goodie of the week.
Oh, I thought you did that earlier. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I haven't done it. It's from Bukhari. It's book 2, number 8, and it's narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, faith, which is belief in their eyes, consists of more than 60 branches, i.e. parts, and higher, and which covers a whole lot of things which are to be taken together. The self-respect, modesty, bashfulness, and scruple, and they are all part of faith.
Well, I like the second part of that. I'm not sure that I'd agree that they fall under faith. I mean, I'm of the view that, strictly speaking, I don't know what my fellow atheists would say. You only use the word faith when you don't have good reasons to say something. Most people don't use that word, and especially Muslims will say when you get to a point where there isn't really an answer, then it becomes okay. I have to take it on faith. Normally, you wouldn't say that. You'd say, "Hey, I believe it, and here's my reasons." But when you get to a point where you no longer have reasons, or they're not very good, then you rely on faith. So the second part I'd probably agree with, but I don't think that those other quote unquote good things, in inverted commas, would fall under the banner of faith. So, but anyway.
But I think it's quite good. Okay, I've got a very, very quick comment I want to make, because something like 20 years ago, when he was still unknown, Christopher Hitchens warned that there was a new deal closer term around, Islamophobia. Now, he warned that Islam was starting to make demands and was starting to infringe on human rights and enter the public space. You know, it's like he was a prophet, because what he said then, and this is like 30 years ago, is coming true today. Now, what this is because I came across an interesting documentary on Tommy Robinson. It was mirrored by TJ. Now, whatever your opinion on Tommy, I mean, I disagree with almost everything that he says, okay? But the facts now emerge that he was very careful not to breach any laws when he was interviewing people before the grooming gang trial. He was not out of public property. He was not saying anything not already in the public domain. So there's a lot of I don't know why there's a lot of stuff going around, and things like, you know, people like Essence of Thought, for example. He came tearing Tommy Robinson a new one because he was of the opinion that he said something that he shouldn't have said, and he was not on public property. And this shows now that a lot of people shoot from the hip and then only start thinking later. So what this entire episode shows me is that the UK government is shit scared of Tommy Robinson. And in my opinion, they know that he has the ability, or a unique ability, I don't know, to move people. And he could start a revolution, except that he's lost. I mean, he doesn't know whether he's Arthur or Martha at the moment. But that's what they probably want. But I'm sure he'll come back, and it will be interesting to see in what role. And this is something that I think we should be watching to see how this pans out in the future. But I just wanted to make that note, because I was very impressed with the way that he sort of carried himself, even though I don't agree with his arguments.
Can I ask which arguments you disagree with of his?
Well, I don't think that we should demonize Islam as a whole. I don't think that we should look at the society impact of Islam using Luton as an example. I don't think that you should go and you should curb Muslims entering the country. I don't think that you should do any of those things. There's a couple more, and I can't think of them at the moment. So I think that Tommy is a great guy. I don't think that his, jumping over a fence and grabbing an ISIS flag is the right way of doing it. I don't think that his, I mean, he has it in his genes, okay? This what he calls the football lads. He still has that. So this is something that I don't agree with.
Maybe we can carry on that afterwards if we want to go sort of on the end of the show. Otherwise, we'll get sort of a bit sidetracked with that now. I want to get to some verses here because obviously we're all.
I just wanted to get that off my chest in the beginning, because a lot of people then go to sleep when we go through the Quran. Especially now, we're coming into a dry spell here.
Also, just a quick interjection. I think it's funny that I've gone on to Muslim shows and they're in England or whatnot, and they'll ask me what I think of Tommy Robinson. And I tell them, dude, I'm American. What makes you think I even care about that guy? Yeah, like as if defending or disavowing Tommy Robertson will somehow make the quotes that you bring forth more or less valid. I just think that's very unique that's going on in England right now.
Yeah,
I'm with that guy, because I don't know who Tommy. I know the name Tommy Robinson. I don't know really what he does or what he did. Or I just heard right now that he grabbed an ISIS flag or something. First time I've heard that. North American. I guess I focus more on regional stuff.
Yeah. So you wouldn't know so much about him. Yeah, he's quite a vocal critic of Islam and so forth over here, and he's got a lot of working class support for his views, as we say. Something you agree with, some you don't. So
like you say, we can carry on with it at the end.
Yeah, we can do a bit more of that. All right. With that said, let's get into some verses here. We can then open it up for discussion. So here we go. So this is Surah 2. Verse 110. So I'll do Sahih International, and we could always read other ones if we need to. So Sahih International 2:110. and establish prayer and give zakat. And whatever good you put forward for yourselves, you will find it with Allah. Indeed, Allah of what you do is seen. Or Yusuf Ali, and be steadfast in prayer and regular in charity, and whatever ye send forth for your souls before ye shall find it with Allah. For Allah sees well all that you do. So that's kind of almost like a golden rule, except that they've thrown Allah in there. You know, if they just said, do unto others as you'd want them to do unto you, you kind of go, okay, that's kind of a good verse. Unfortunately, they've thrown Allah in there, but I don't know. What's your thoughts? Anybody want to comment on that?
It's steadfast in prayer, but it's not sort of like steadfast in your relationship with God, is it? It's the namaz. I don't know what point or how much of the prayer they've got at this moment in time, but let's assume it's the 5 times a day prayer, repeating 5 times the same pattern of words. I don't see any benefit for the human being. Why would you get up 5 times a day, say the same things 5 times a day, in the same direction 5 times a day? It's more perfunctory. It's not developing a relationship or an intimate relationship, which is what prayer is supposed to do. Prayer really is communication with God, where you're talking to Him. That's what prayer is. But you're not really talking to Him if you're just reading a tract or a pre-prescribed, dialogue.
Well, let's hear what our Muslim guests have got to say. What's
actually, before that, let's get into the tafsir real quick, because you think that's a golden rule, but it sounds like a golden rule. But if you read Ibn Kathir, the Messenger of Allah used to forgive them and was patient with them as Allah ordered, until Allah allowed fighting them. Then Allah destroyed those who He decreed to be killed among the strong men of the Quraysh by the Prophet's forces. So, it might have come off as that at first, but in reality, that was when Muhammad wasn't in power, as opposed to when he later became in power.
Okay, well, let's get the Muslim comments, guys. If you want to comment, if you don't, that's fine. We'll move on. But if you have any comments on it, so here's the tafsir by Ibn Kathir.
I want to comment. I want to comment on this verse. The prayer is the most personal connection you have with Allah from an Islamic perspective. And the prayer is not saying the words, the same words, because you can say the prayer starts every time with the first verse, Surah Fatiha, the opening, and then the second verse you can choose yourself. You can choose all the verses in the Quran, so it's not the same prayer, and it's a direct connection, because you have a communication directly with Allah. And that's what the verse is saying. And the verse is saying that if you do good, you will find it forward, and it means on the day of judgment. So if you do good here, sometimes you don't see the results here. Sometimes you do good, but you don't see the results. You say, I'm doing good. Why things happening to me, blah, blah, blah. But the real outcome, the real conclusion of the good things you will do, also the bad things you will do, even if you do it bad and you don't get caught or don't get the karma you will get on this earth, but you will find it on the day of judgment with Allah. That's what the verse is saying.
Okay, just to counter that then, because I actually know the namaz. It's one of the few things I still remember being brought up as a Muslim. So when I've never heard of this, you start with Surah Fatiha and then you can say what you like next. So even that in itself doesn't make sense, because all you're doing is, if you quote another part of the Quran, you're just quoting a pre-prescribed piece of dialogue that's been pre-written for you. That's not having a personal relationship. That's like you, I don't know if you have children, Benny, but if you write down 1,000 lines of, like, Daddy, I love you, Daddy, I thank you, Daddy, can you tie my shoelaces before I go to school? And your child coming up to you and picking any 10 of those pre-written lines, and that's the only dialogue you ever hear from your child. That doesn't seem to me to make sense, or is actually a relationship being developed if you've given your child the dialogue of what to say to you when she's approaching to speak to you. Now, just to follow that forward, and let's just go along with your logic that you can
just start with Surah Fatiha, then quote from any other line of the Quran. So you're saying I could start with Surah Fatiha, and then I could say, well, then it's okay to beat your wife if you fear disobedience. Zulkarnain built a copper-covered iron wall, and then I conclude my namaz by saying, all non-Muslims are the worst of creatures. So those are the lines I'm going to choose from the Quran, and are you suggesting Allah would find that acceptable?
The prayer is a reminder. If you stand in the prayer, it means you leave the world behind. You leave the world behind and you connect directly with Allah. And when you connect directly with Allah, you recite His verses, and by reciting His verses are reminders of your purpose, reminders what is coming ahead, reminders that you have to focus. That is the main function of a prayer. If your prayer is strict and sincere, you will see it in your behavior, because you will be conscious of what you are doing. You will be conscious of what you are saying. So that's
but can you give a verse or a hadith that supports that anything brings you closer to Allah other than faith? Because the Quran is very explicit, and so is Muhammad in the hadith, that there is a huge separation between Allah and His creation, and that nothing really brings a person closer to Allah, that Allah is as close to us as our jugular only in the fact of His knowledge.
You can ask, you can search around, because
no, I asked you to provide what you said, because I can provide the verses in the hadiths that I just said, but can you provide anything to support your claim that you just made?
So you mean what I'm saying is just made up or something? It's just made up? This you can ask every Muslim. This is normal. Maybe you can ask Arab.
Every Muslim that you deal as a real Muslim, that you consider a real Muslim.
Even Oz will confirm. Oz, if you are there, can you confirm, please?
What confirm what exactly? Can you be precise?
That first you can the prayer. Okay, first you can confirm that you first have to recite the Surah Fatiha, the opening, and then the second verse you can choose yourself. If you are praying by yourself, but if you are praying in a congregation, then the Imam is the one who chooses the verses. That is the first confirmation, because Thunderous doesn't think so. And the second confirmation is that the best communication between you and Allah is the prayer. Can you confirm that?
So I 90% agree with you. So basically, from what's typically practiced in the Islamic world, you read Fatiha, as I'm sure everyone in this conversation already knows. You read Fatiha first, and then you read one of the different surahs afterwards. But I wouldn't say you can say whatever you want. It's one of the surahs from the Qur'an, and also it has to be in particular order, right? So, for example, in the first rak'ah, if I read, for example, Surah Al-Ikhlas, in the next one I'd have to read Surah Al-Nas, one after Surah Al-Ikhlas. That's my understanding of it.
Okay, so what you're basically saying is that your communication, so this is going to you two Muslims, so what you're basically saying is when you're actually talking to your God Allah, it is a bit like going to a menu. You have your starter, the starter is set, so that's Surah Fatiha, that's your starter, that is set in stone, that's how you start your relationship in communication, and then the rest of it is just a sequence of surahs, or sorry, ayahs from the Quran that you feel like saying. You can't have your own opinion, you can't say anything from your heart or anything that might come to your mind for that moment. You can only quote from this menu of words that are found in the Quran. You cannot quote anything else. So that's not a relationship then, is it?
Can I reply to that? I want to reply to that. For the 5 daily prayers, this is the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He used to recite the first verse Fatiha, and then the second verse, of course, it depends on the circumstance. It depends on the day. It depends on sometimes on the Friday prayer. The most popular verse is A'la, Surah A'la.
Benny, I understand that. Benny, I understand that.
And you have also, I'm not finished. Let me finish, please. And then you have also dua. Dua means supplication. In a supplication, you can ask whatever you want. You can ask. That's not a prayer. You don't have to speak Arabic for that. In a 5 daily prayer, you have to speak Arabic. But in a dua, the supplication, you can speak every language you want. And you can ask whatever you want.
Once again, give the verse that says you have to speak it in Arabic. Give the verse.
The dua is well known. The dua is well known. You can speak every language.
Or say that it's just a Muslim opinion, because there is no verse where Allah tells you that you have to speak Arabic.
Agreed.
There is not one verse.
And dua, you can speak every language.
Out of the thousands of hadiths, you can't find a hadith where Muhammad said that you have to speak
Arabic. I can find it, but do we have the time to really dig in? And every time I say something, you question it? You can ask,
Benny, to be fair, you know, we both share the opinion that prayer is beneficial. We can substantiate on that point, right? But to be fair, there is no hadith that says that dua has to be said in Arabic. There isn't one.
I said dua. You have to say. You can say it in every language. Dua. Okay, you can say the prayer has to be in Arabic. The prayer.
Where is that verse?
Where the dua, the supplication.
Listen, no, we're going off. We're going off track.
Yes, you're right.
Yes, I agree, Stops. We're going off track. But the whole point is you have to call people out when they make claims about something.
Yeah,
because then it shows that what they're saying in the future might not be substantiated with the actual religion.
You can check it out. I'm not lying. You can check it out.
But Benny, the point that we're making is the prayer a ritualistic repetition 5 times a day?
It's yes, you can see it that way, but you don't say the verses every time the same verses.
I didn't talk about that.
Okay, yeah. You can say that. Okay. You can see it that way. Yes, you can see.
All right. Now it says here to establish the prayer. Does it say how to establish the prayer? Why to establish the prayer? And most of all, what happens if you don't?
Then that's why you have a teacher, and the teacher is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the Quran is the foundation. That's why he sends prophets as a teacher. He doesn't give you all the details, but he gives you through a role model.
Hang on. No.
You know what I mean? You understand what I mean? You follow?
This is the manual that is supposed to get you into salvation. This is
the foundation
manual which is supposed to spell everything out for you. And now you're telling me, no, I don't care what God wants. I need to follow what humans tell me I need to do.
Allah says in the Quran that if you really follow me, so if you really want to follow Allah, follow me and my messenger, and give him the authority. That means that whatever he does and teach you is on behalf of me. So
are you saying your God is incompetent?
No, my God, Allah is not a human being. Allah is not a human being. He is not coming on earth to teach you how to pray. He sends a human being to teach this. He sends a human being who looks like you. You can relate to him. So you can relate. He's not gonna come down on earth for you and to teach you how to pray, or make a big manual. Then the Quran is about 1 million pages. Then the Quran is not. Then
how many pages is it with the hadith?
Why not?
You know what I mean? Why not? You really think?
How many pages is it with the hadith?
It's not. If God sends a manual with 1 million of pages, 1 million of details, trust me, human beings are not waiting for that. We are not waiting for details and 1 million of pages.
That's not what I asked. I was talking about, because if you're trying to say that the 5 daily prayers is necessary, which inside the Quran it's only 3 of them that are mentioned, and then if you're saying that there's a certain way that you have to pray for it to be true, which that's not in the Quran, other than that you must bow, prostrate, and then pray. And it never says anything about how many rakas you have to say, how many this and that. And then, but you have to go outside of the Quran to the hadith. And your claim just now was, well, in his infinite wisdom, Allah sent down a very short book that was easy and for everybody people can memorize it. It's not 1,000,000 pages, but then you have to go through thousands of pages of hadiths to substantiate your claim.
Look, the Quran is a guidance for a foundation.
Are you going to respond to what I just said?
Yeah, I will respond, but you have to follow. Look, the Quran is a guidance for foundations. What I mean, foundation is what really matters. What really matters is that Allah is the creator, and that He sends revelation, He sends prophets. It will be a day of judgment. You will go to heaven or hell. That's the real foundations. You will find guidance in that. But the details.
If that was the real guidance, then the Quran is extended way beyond what it really has.
Let me finish. You don't have to agree, but this is the Islamic perspective.
No, sorry. This is your perspective, right?
So,
yes, it's his.
He sends role models and teachers who Allah says you have to pray, establish prayer. But how do you establish prayer? He sends the guidance for that. And the guidance is the messenger. So the messenger will teach you. He will teach you what to do before prayer, like washing your ablution. He will teach you what to say, which verses, what you can use, and the direction, what to do. That's why he sends a messenger. Otherwise, if he didn't send a messenger, if Prophet Muhammad is not a teacher, then he will send a book from the sky without nobody, without a human being.
Then the quick counter to that
is... Do you follow?
No, I follow. But the quick counter to that is obviously the message got mixed up even in the teachings because you have Muslims praying different ways across the world. Some hold their hands out, some cross their arms. Now, both are inside, allegedly, that Muhammad did both inside of the hadiths. So somewhere the teaching got misconstrued. Now, nowhere did Allah say that you have to do either of these, okay? So either Allah doesn't care the way that you pray other than that you bow, prostrate, and then pray, or Muhammad cared on how to do it, and then the people tried to follow him, but Muhammad wasn't consistent enough. So what I'm getting at here is, what if everything that you're saying to us is just your opinion and that you don't have any proof that any of this is correct outside of Allah's word?
We have companions who saw him, who were witness when he was alive.
And I just told you that there's conflicting. I just told you conflicting stories. There's conflicting stories about the way that Muhammad prayed.
Okay, no problem. Can I finish? And there's different ways of for example, holding the hands and everything is different ways. It's not a big problem, but there will be a big problem if you, for example, don't start with the opening of the chapter. That is the foundation of a prayer. You are looking at the details, but you will have to look at the foundation.
Yeah, you were just talking about how the Quran is the foundation and Muhammad is the teacher.
The foundation of the prayer
correctly, how to do it correctly. Now,
Muhammad is authority. He's authority. Yes, for you, is not authority, but he's authority. What he says is on behalf of Allah.
Benny,
why so? Let him finish. Come on.
But he's not finishing anything. All he's doing is going around what I'm asking.
You don't have to agree, bro. You don't have to agree.
Then say
okay, wait. Look, why so? Look, you don't have to agree. This is the Islamic perspective. You can ask every Muslim. You can go to every, and they will tell you all the same thing. This is how the Prophet Muhammad used to pray. This is what
Which
he
way?
teaches.
Which way? Did he cross his arms or hold his hands out?
Both
so
are
if he did
permissible.
Both, then there is no correct way to do it.
The main point of prayer is that you have that you are sincere in your prayer and that you are focused on Allah. That's the main point. So then
you don't need the hadiths to tell you how to pray.
Yes, you need that because he's authority.
Does anybody understand what I'm saying and how he's not answering it?
I understand your point myself.
I understand it because you're saying it basically you can do what you want and there is no consequence for either which way. It's a free for all. Benny, it doesn't work like that.
I was going to ask as well on the subject of prayer. I don't know whether to go there or not. Why on earth do we have to have all these positions and prostrations that we have to repeat in one prayer? Like you start off by standing up, then you bow down, then you stand up again, then you bow down, then you get on your knees, then you get on your head, then you get back on your knees again, then you get back on your head, then you stand up again, then you bow down, then you get back on your knees. What on earth are all these ritualistic positions? What's the point of them? Why would Allah ask you to adopt all these different positions, repeating the same old words in every position that you're in?
Because those positions is a symbol of unity. If we Muslims come together in a mosque and pray, and we all pray the same way, is a symbol of unity. When you have unity, you feel more. You know, how can I say? You feel more. If everybody comes to a mosque and prays how he prays, somebody bowing and somebody standing up, then it's a chaos. It's a chaos. So it's a unity. It's a symbol of unity, and that's why we pray all direction to Mecca.
If it's unity, then how come some people have their hands out and some people cross?
That's not a big problem. That is a small thing.
It's not unified, is it? It's not unified.
You know what the problem is? You know what the problem is? If the imam prostrates and you still standing up, that's a big problem. That's a big problem.
Benny, I've seen other religions when they pray in their various denominations, they have unity and they don't do the things that you're suggesting. You're basically suggesting that the Muslims is the only religion that prays in unity. Yet every other religion prays, they have unity too, but they don't have all these positions that the Muslim religion does. And that's one point. The second point is all the positions that Muhammad implemented in his namaz is actually from the Zoroastrian or Persian culture called proskynesis. Can you explain every position of the Persian custom of proskynesis? Why are all those positions identical? For every single one of them is in the Islamic prayer.
Okay, hang on. Okay, guys, wait. Yeah, I want Oz to join in here. So Oz, give us your view on this.
Okay, can we go back to the very, very first question that was asked to Benny about this? The first question. I think that they all deserve concrete answers. So can we go back to the beginning?
Which one do you want to answer that?
So there were questions about is this routine? Do you think this is routine? And what does this mean? Does this mean that you're not connecting personally because it's a ritual? And then there was another question that said, is the Qur'an insufficient if it doesn't tell you how to pray?
All right, go ahead with
and what happens if you don't, and why do you pray in the first place?
Easy. Okay, let's do one at a time. We won't leave this verse at this rate. So let's do a shortish version, Oz.
Well, it's a fundamental question here. This is the problem.
Yeah. Fine, no worry. In my opinion, yes, this routine is clearly a routine, right? Now, does that necessarily mean that there is no personal relationship? I think
no.
Right, exactly. So that you can't necessarily say that anything that is routine devoids you of developing a personal relationship, because just on a fundamental biological level, like the way that you raise a child, a newborn, is quite there's a lot of routine in it, but you're developing a relationship as you're doing that. So that bit needs substantiating. Do you mind if we discuss that point?
Okay, but if you're bringing up a child, you're introducing new vocabulary, you're encouraging your child to interact with you at its level, at its pace, with its own heartfelt mind and soul. You're not asking your child, when you speak to me, this is what you say, this is how you say it, and this is the positions to adopt when you're talking to me. You do not do that with a child. No parent in the history of mankind has ever done that with a child. So your analogy and or analogous to the parent and child relationship in this situation is irrelevant and defunct, and it's actually, is a moot point.
Okay, I think that's quite a good counter argument. So what I would say to that is, would you make the claim that anything that is completely routine cannot possibly be susceptible to developing a personal relationship? Yes. Would you make that point? Would you say categorically that if something is routine in every aspect, then it's impossible to develop a personal relationship in that?
No, absolutely. I wouldn't go if I got married to a woman and I only had a pre-prescribed set of sentences I could ever use with her. I couldn't improvise or use my own free will and my own emotions and my own interaction with how I interact with my wife.
that would make no sense at all. It would be robotic and perfunctory. She would derive no benefit out of that because she would see no sincerity in what I'm saying to her. She would know, well, he's only quoting this line, he's only quoting that line, he's only quoting that line. It becomes meaningless. The relationship would become meaningless and void.
So what's your view on? Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if you look at the biblical narrative, which is the point I'm going to come with, the whole point of your communication with God is that you're actually developing a relationship with him as a father and a son relationship. God wants you to speak to him in the way that you want to speak to him, not with a pre-prescribed transcription of what words to say and what position to adopt when you're saying it.
Yeah.
Any relationship in the history of mankind, if all you gave them, whether it's 1,000 words or 1,000,000 words or 2,000,000 words or sentences rather, and they had to pick which sentences they're going to use at any one given time, like some kind of salutation when you call in the call center, and this is what I say if that question is asked, that's what sentence to use when that question is asked, is not going to be a relationship in the slightest.
Okay, sure. So I would agree with you that the prayer is not necessarily the routine of the prayer is not entirely what's the word? It's not entirely emancipating when you look at the routine specifically, but when you factor in the element of the emotional element and the feeling of connection that you actually have liberty and authority over. So the words are routine, the action is routine, but that feeling as you're submitting and you're prostrating to something that you believe is beyond your control, that feeling is where I believe that you have some kind of free will or agency to develop. That's my.
There's no free will when you're being told what to do and how to say it. That's not free. You make the choice to actually do the act, but what's coming out your mouth and the position you're adopting is not free will. You're just that's what's known as following by rote. You're doing it out of some kind of perfunctory pre-routine service that's been pre-prescribed to you. Now. You stand in the car. You sitting in the car, for instance, you pulling over, and you decide to say, "Well, actually, I'm going to talk to Allah at this moment in time because this is doing that. I've got this piece of stress, or this is affecting me, or I don't know what's happening over there." And using your own words, your own emotion, and your own psyche to develop that relationship and your own free will. That would be what a relationship is. That would be what free will is. And what you're saying about a connection with God. Any religion could turn around and say the Hindu could turn around and say that, the Sikh can turn around and say that.
I never said that. Sorry.
Okay. 1 second, guys. Hang on a second. Okay, so Thunderous, I think we've got your point. Your point is that this monotonous 5 times a day thing isn't developing a relationship. I mean, obviously, we could investigate that further just in general, because if God is all knowing and so forth, then you wouldn't have to do any prayer. All you'd have to do is feel or think something. You wouldn't have to do anything else, and He, in fact, would know you're going to do that anyway. But your main point is that you don't feel like it's establishing. So I understand your point. Obviously, you're not going to shift from that. And Oz, you feel like that you are establishing some form of, be it some sort of a relationship in some way if you keep repeating this.
No, that's not my view. Apologies. I agreed with everything that was said, except the last bit where I felt like my point was being mischaracterized. So my perspective is this, right? First of all, I've never said that other spiritual relationships are invalid. I haven't made that point, okay? Secondly, I agree that the routine in action and in speech is restricted and it's limited. And I think anyone with a logical capacity can see that, and we can't deny that, right? But where I'm saying the free agency is not in the prostration, it's not in the speaking and the routine, but it's in that feeling that you get while you're doing it. That's where I believe that there's room for maneuver and where that relationship develops. That's my perspective.
Okay, but I mean, you could just do it in your heart, right? You could just think it as well. You don't have to go and do all of these things. From an outside perspective, it looks like this is like, because I used to be in the army and so forth. This looks like you're being trained to do something. So the more you do it, the more you fall in line with everybody else, and it becomes becomes like almost like a cult following. This is a tradition. We had a show on the cult following as well. So this is like one aspect of drawing people into a cult. They do the same thing over and over every day, and it becomes inculcated so that there's less thinking and it's more just repeating things that are being done. So from an outside perspective, the whole thing of having 5 prayers and saying these same things without just going in your heart, closing your eyes, and if you want to have some sort of speech with something greater than yourself, you don't need to go through all of this. So from an outside perspective, I think it looks suspect, to say the least.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not Stockholm syndrome. It's like Mecca syndrome.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, but what happens if you don't?
Can I respond to the point that was just
Go
made?
ahead, and then
I
you
thought you
then
finished.
this question. We'll bring Benny back in.
Okay, cool. So, sorry, I just forgot. You were saying that
So this seems like a cultish type thing, having to do it 5 times a day, and not your own words either. You've got to repeat something that's been told to you to repeat. So, yeah, you can go ahead and respond to that.
Okay, sure. So, in my perspective, in theory, yes, you could just pray in your heart. Now, there are two ways. There are two ways of seeing this. It could either be a form of indoctrination, or it could be that there could be wisdom behind the routine, insofar as perhaps the routine is in place in order to remind you to develop that connection, or in order to instigate a particular emotion on a regular basis. Now, I'm genuine. I actually mean this genuinely. I'm not trying to be a Trojan horse here. I sincerely am happy to discuss openly why that would fall into a form of indoctrination in your view, because there are two sides to see this. So how would you define indoctrination, and what makes, where is the line between the constant reminder and routine and indoctrination? Where do you think that's
Okay, I mean that's a gray area, but think of it this way, Oz. If, like, I love my wife, I don't have to, say it 5 times a day. I don't have to be reminded. I don't need a book. If you have a relationship, and presumably a close relationship, you don't need reminding to do these things, and you don't have to do it day after day, the same thing. You do it because you want to. You do it because it's something that's sort of draws you towards the person. And if you're forgetful, then obviously you can be reminded by other people. But it seems that this is totally unnecessary if you are really trying to have this loving relationship with this. Now, in your view, presumably you're not having a loving relationship, you're having a supplication type relationship. You are this sort of person who is supplicating to this being. So maybe the analogy doesn't quite hold, because it's not a loving relationship, in which case you don't require any of this. But if you're being told to follow and to do what the dear leader tells you, then yes, I can see why. So if it's, I think Hitchens is right from my view, that it's like a celestial North Korea, then I can see it being a reason to do that. But presumably Muslims will reject that analogy. If you do reject that analogy, then the analogy of loving your wife and not having to do this, I think you can't square that, it seems to me.
Sure. Okay. What I'll do, because I don't want to dominate the entire conversation, I will summarize my point and then I'll let Benny come in, right? So I say, based on what you said, I would say this. The first thing is we need to ask ourselves if it's okay. Let's assume that something is indoctrination. Let's just entertain that idea, right? So, is it possible? Is it a bad thing necessarily to be indoctrinated into? If we assume that something is beneficial and is indoctrination for the sake of to entertain that idea, is it necessarily a bad thing to be indoctrinated into something beneficial? This is the first question.
Yeah, well, okay. So on that question, then very quickly, that seems to me to be begging the question, because you haven't established that it's a good thing. So you would need to make the argument, which again, maybe we could do post-show afterwards. Otherwise, we'll never sort of move on. But
I need
I agree with you. If something is good and you do it over, like going to the gym every day would be a good thing. And we can demonstrate that. If you could demonstrate that saying the same thing over and over in a, in like a sort of almost like a parrot fashion thing is a good thing, as opposed to specifically regards to your creator, then yes, we could agree that. But you haven't established that at all. You've assumed it. And I think you've jumped the gun.
Okay, I can establish. So if this is sincerely my opinion, why I feel like it's beneficial. Okay, and it might appear abstract. But the way I see things, I'm quite nihilistic. I know that's ironic as a religious person, but I am quite nihilistic in a sense, because I feel like in society I'm enslaved in all cases, and being born is quite a it's quite an absurd reality. You're born into a situation, you're expected to make sense of it, and whatever you do, you're bound to be enslaved to something. So the way I see this routine is that it reminds me like of my irrelevance. It reminds me of my insignificance, and it does detach me from materialism. Now, I don't think that not performing this routine means that I'm not performing any routine, because our daily life is a routine. So when we're not connected in the spiritual realm and we come back to the material realm, we are still engaging in routines. And I don't think that's been addressed in this conversation as well. So that's my perspective on this anyway, but yeah.
Okay, I just want to, before we bring, Sydney, you've been very quiet. I don't know if there's anything you want to say here. If not, that's cool. But otherwise, I'll pass it on to some of the other guys there.
Oh, I've been listening intently.
Okay, cool.
I'm listening to sort of Islam as being pretty much a copycat of Christianity. You know, you got your God, you got your prophet, you got your teacher, you got. It's almost like and maybe an Arabic cultural form of Christianity.
Well, what's your view specifically, if you have anything, around this whole prayer thing and the 5 times a day and repeating certain things that you've been told to say, as opposed to, because obviously the argument has been brought that, hey, if you have a relationship, you should be able to say whatever you feel in your heart, potentially, as opposed to just repeating something 5 times a day.
Well, my background, I sort of grew up on the fringes of Judaism, and they do much the same thing. They don't do it 5 times a day. They do it twice a day. They do it in a more sort of a civilized, congregational, within a building somewhere. But they do the same thing, and they repeat the same prayers twice a day. And at some point you stand. You have to stand, and at some point you don't. It's not quite as strict or rigid, but it's kind of the same daily repetition and praising and worship of the Jewish God.
Yeah, I mean, is it a good thing, or do you see any benefits in this, or do you think it's?
I see a benefit for those who work at the building and who conduct who are paid basically.
I think that's a very narrow benefit. I mean, a general benefit to the adherents also.
Yeah.
All right, good. Let's open it up. Anybody else want to comment?
I just want to say the most unique part about this whole thing is how nobody ever notices that, even according to the Qur'an, to Muslim sources, that the opening chapter, the opening in the Quran, okay, is chronologically the 5th surah, according to all Muslim sources. But prayer is so important to Allah that he goes through 4 surahs of just talking about how Muhammad was told to read and recite, and then how Muhammad was wrapped in garments and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden, and then Muslims are having to remind Allah, hey, you haven't told us how to pray yet. He's like, oh, that's right. I totally left that out for the past 6 months. Like if you actually read the history of it, it talks about how between the Al-Aqra, the read recite surah, there's some that say it was years before Muhammad got another revelation. So I just think that it's really funny that Allah thinks it's so important to pray, and that Muslims hold in high regard. Oh, you have to pray 5 times a day. You have to do it the way that Muhammad did it. When Allah was like, you know what? I'm not even going to mention it for at least 5 surahs. Bam, get over it.
Yeah, I think why so though? I mean, if I play devil's advocate, the Muslims could potentially easily answer that by going, hey, in the beginning, Allah was establishing this relationship with Muhammad. There were no other followers anyway. So establishing the prayer, if this is the case, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If he didn't have any followers, isn't that important? First, you establish a relationship, and then you get to the prayer. And once the prayer is there, and everybody after that will follow the prayer anyway.
Well, no, because what if they die? Right? If Allah is saying that one of the most important things is that you worship him, not just that you have faith in him and his messengers, but that you worship him and you supplicate to him and you pray to him, but yet he hasn't given any direction to what the actual prayer is. And this actually kind of in the way to pray. To me, as a person who just reads the Quran, the Quran comes off as Allah just doesn't care how you pray, other than that you bow, you prostrate, and that you pray. But then when it comes down to the hadiths, maybe that's why there is a difference of the way that Muslims pray. Because if you look at hadiths, maybe the prayer that Muhammad was doing with his arms crossed was the prayer before al-fitna was given to him, and then after he changed it. But we don't know that, do we? There's not even sources that claim that, or it could be vice versa. But the whole point here that I'm making is it was so important, and Muslims put such an emphasis on it today, that even inside their own sources, these revelations didn't come until they were spread out over such a time period that Muslims had to ask Muhammad for a revelation from Allah on how to pray and what to pray.
Yeah, I mean, sure, you could definitely say that. Again, the Muslims could come back and say, hey, he was all-knowing. He knew exactly what was going to happen, and he did it at the right time for him. Now, of course, they could say that about anything. So, it's not necessarily a good argument, but they could respond in some way. I understand what you're saying. I'm just not so sure that they would be strong against Muslims, but we've got Muslims on the panel here, so maybe they can respond.
Yeah, I want to respond. First of all, Allah doesn't need our prayers. He's independent.
I never said that he needed your prayers.
Okay, let me
stop misrepresenting what I say, dude. You've done this time and time again.
But you said something like Allah need our prayers, or
I didn't say that. I never said that.
What did you say then about Allah?
Okay, Benny, you're not paying attention. He said there was a big gap between Allah revealing himself to Muhammad and then the prayers being explained.
Before he said something. Okay. Let me clarify something. Okay, let me just remind. Allah is independent of nobody. We creation are independent on
Talk
Allah.
about the topic. Don't go off on this theological BS that we already know.
Okay, I will do that. The prayer is very beneficial for us because it reminds us of the reality. Because you are with your work, you are busy with this world, with your work, that you can easily forget your purpose. You can easily
Benny, hang on a moment. Benny,
so yes,
Benny, please respond to what Wisa said. If you want to respond specifically to this, so let me phrase it for you, and then please respond to this. Otherwise, you are going off. You're telling us how beneficial. That's not the point. The point is, if you have a response, great. If not, we'll move it on to Oz. Wiso's point is that, hey, Muhammad got this first revelation. Then there was a long time period between that and Allah telling or explaining to Muhammad how to pray so that he could tell his adherents how to pray. And if it's so important, Wiso's point is, why was this not done at the very beginning or very quickly after his first revelation?
Because first you have to establish a good, how can I say it? You have to, the believers have to mature. When you are mature, then you are ready for the commandments. And one of the commandments is that you have to pray, and then you are ready for that. So first you have to establish, the first thing Prophet Muhammad came with is the foundations, that Allah is one, there's a heaven and hell, and I'm the messenger, and that's the foundations. And when people...
but that wasn't even in the first one. That wasn't even in Al-Aqla, Al-Lakat, right?
The warning,
that one wasn't even in it. So what you're saying is that's not no. It just says to read and recite from the one who created man from a clot, right? That's not the foundation that you just mentioned. That's not the part of the foundation. Now you want to add on to what the foundation is, right?
Can I finish, please? Can I finish? So first you have to establish foundations. When you establish foundations and growth and maturity in the believers, then the laws comes. Then the commandment came, then they can take it easy. For example, about the alcohol. First, the alcohol was not forbidden because they were not mature enough. And then later, when they are mature, the alcohol was forbidden. Example. Benny, I want to give you an example to think about.
Benny, you are talking as if this God doesn't have enough power here to command these people and for him to obey. They're like little children. They need to be slowly coached to do this. This is just your own opinion that you're doing here.
Does he? Allah knows what he's created. Allah knows what he's created. So
exactly. So he could have done the prayer right in the beginning. Oz, what's your thought on this? Have you got something? And then I think we need to move on.
Yeah, I think Benny will probably disagree with me here. But I think the answer to that question is simple. Why were some things about prayer mentioned in the Qur'an and then came later is because I personally hold the view that you can't separate the Qur'an from its socio-political context in Arabia. That's my opinion. I think it's a simple
what does that mean though? Just flesh that out. You've got this all-powerful, Oz, you've got this all-powerful creator. He reveals himself to Muhammad. One of the most important things I think you all agree is to pray to Muhammad, to Allah. And so how is this the thing? Because remember, he's all powerful. He could snap his fingers. He could get everybody to do it. And he could bring the angels. He could do anything. So it sounds like, and I don't know if I'm correct at this moment in time, but it sounds like you're trying to make a reason why it didn't happen as quickly as one would expect if this is in fact as important as it's supposed to be.
Okay, I'm not trying to, sorry, I don't believe this is a form of like confirmation bias. I genuinely see all religions as part of their historical context, and as people interact with those religions and they incorporate those religions into their lives, new things come, and new things emerge from the way that people practice that religion. Which is why I agree. This is where I agree with you and disagree with Benny. That's why I don't think one can say that there is an objective way to pray correctly, because everyone is clear. It's very clear when you look at it from a neutral historical perspective that people took those instructions in different ways. I think that's quite evident. It will be difficult to, sorry?
So I see on the chat that some Muslims replied that the prayer was established at the beginning. So if that's true, I was mistaken.
That's not in your sources either.
It was established at the beginning. There's some Muslims
on
the chat. So I will check it out, and if maybe I was mistaken, but I think it was.
You notice what's going on here. You notice what's going on here.
Some Muslims confirm.
Just because a Muslim says something, you're willing to accept it, even though I could screenshot it right now if they allow me to, and I could disprove this whole narrative that you just instantly believed because some Muslim propagated it. Do you understand how that is a flawed philosophy of life?
Benny,
because what if that Muslim's actually a Shia and they're tricking you? What about that? Does that even enter your mind at all, bro?
Benny, if you're going to make the claim that in fact, whatever this person in the chat has said, bring the evidence and we can examine it. But don't jump to it just because it seems to,
Yes, for the Muslims in the chat, for MSTEX and for fruit discussion or something, can you please put it in your chat, the evidence for the prayer established, because I saw it in your chat. Thank you.
Okay, I think Stops is being quiet, and so is Thunderous. So do you guys want to add something? I think at some point we've got to move on here.
Yeah, I just want to summarize this whole thing. I'm not going to ask any Muslim. I'm just going to state the facts here. Number one, this whole thing is absolute total nonsense, because no matter how much you pray, you will never receive an answer. Number two, the whole point of praying is totally useless because God already knows everything and nothing will change. So doing this prayer thing is totally ludicrous. Number three, you are given some certain rituals which don't make sense one iota, because we don't live on a flat earth, we live on a sphere. So you can't face Mecca, you can't pray after or before sunrise if there is no sunrise or no sunset. It's the same thing as with the fasting. We are created by this God, apparently, allegedly, only to pray, to worship. And yet this God does not want any worship. And yet we are created to worship for a God who doesn't want any worship. That doesn't make any kind of sense. So whatever we look at in prayer, it is totally ridiculously nonsensical. It is not defined anywhere. And coming now with things, well, it was defined, revealed before or after. There is no chronology in the Quran. We do not know this. This is all projection, where some people say, well, this one came before that one, the other one came before this. And then the next scholar says, no, it's the other way around. We don't know any of this. So saying that the prayer wasn't revealed because it wasn't important enough doesn't matter. What matters is what the point of the prayer is, that it makes absolutely no sense.
Okay,
if we were not told how to do it, where to
that.
do it, why to do it, and so on and so forth.
I'm going to have to push
none of
back
this
on
makes
that.
sense. That's it.
Because here's the thing. If you're saying that it doesn't matter what they're actually propagating, okay, what is actually belief inside of Islam, then I don't know how we can ever even read the Quran and sit here and say anything about it objectionably.
Why so religious? Abso-fucking-lutely. You are right. But this is not the topic that we are discussing today. Yes, you can go off on a tangent. You have thousands of things that you can discuss on this. You can have an whole show on this. But that's not what we're doing at the moment. We're only looking at the concept of prayer, not at the contents.
And that's exactly what I brought up, man. Sometimes I don't understand here, dude.
No, what you did is you brought up, well, when was it brought up? And I can show you with a screenshot
the
when
concept
it was revealed.
of prayer.
You cannot do that.
Can we move on with the verses, please? Can we move on with the verses?
Okay, did somebody else want to say something? And I think we need to go on.
Can I ask Benny a question?
You want to ask Benny a question?
Yes. And
then we'll move on. Go ahead.
Benny, I apologize. I don't want him to make. Obviously, we're both Arabs or Muslim or whatever, and I don't want to make it look like we're ganging up on you, right? It's a genuine question. Do you think that there's an objective way to pray correctly?
Objective way to pray correctly. I think our teacher is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him. He's our authority. He's the one who we go back to when we don't know things. So that's the objective. Is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Can I conclude now on this? First of all,
something.
Our new guest, I would certainly like to thank his smooth, succinct, and courteous way that he's responding. It's actually quite refreshing to have him on the panel. I would also, and I hope that you do continue joining us on a regular basis. I might not necessarily agree with you, but I certainly agree and appreciate the tone and manner and courteous way that you're responding to us. As far as my opinion on prayer is concerned, the namaz, as far as Islam is concerned, is not consistent with anything found in the Judeo-Christian doctrine of the Bible. And it seems to me the more you analyze, and I'll conclude on this, the more you analyze the Islamic prayer as provided by Muhammad and the Quran, the more you find 100% of its roots in paganism. You find its origins in paganism and demonism.
Do you know how Jesus used to pray in the Bible? He put his forehead on the ground. Do you know how Abraham used to pray?
Benny, please, Benny, you annoy me because you just
do you follow Jesus?
Benny, you want me to correct you, Benny, because you're winding me up now.
You see, now you're going again. No, please.
Benny needs to watch himself.
I have a comment about prayer.
Go ahead.
It seems to be prayer and gambling addiction, for example, would be very closely related, because you pray at the same time for the same thing 5 times a day, and your life, of course, continues as it continues, and usually your life is shit. But you pray and you pray and you pray and you pray and pray, and sometimes something really good happens in your life, and you say, "Wow, my prayer worked." It's gambling. You feel good, you get that buzz, and then you carry on praying and praying and praying, and your life just continues until the next big thing happened that you say because you prayed for it, it happened. It's all a scam.
Yeah, I think you've got a point there in prayer in general. I mean, obviously we're focusing on the Islamic 5 times a day, but I think you've got the point is that when I see any religious person, and I've got family members who are religious, they will praise God for a couple of good things that happen, but they will never curse God for the tsunami that wiped out 200,000 or this one or that one. There will always be some excuse why that's not God's fault. But when something good happens, well, that's the mercy of God. So I agree with you. There's the inconsistency, it seems to me, with this sort of thing. I think, if your claim was only, hey, I'm having this interaction and I believe or I have faith that he's hearing me, but you don't go any further than that, I think then you at least on quote unquote slightly safer ground. But as soon as you make the claim that your prayer has been answered, then of course we've got to look a lot more closely to see the times when it wasn't answered. And is this just confirmation bias kicking in, which we all do as human beings anyway? So I think that's where I think, theistic people need to be a bit more careful about doing and say, hey, I have a relationship. I'm just saying this and I've got faith that it's being answered, but not go any further, because I think then you trip yourself up.
So, Benny, just so you know, you can look up 73 of the Quran, Surah 73, Ayah 20. And this is where Fruitful would say that this is prayer, but actually it's talking about Muhammad standing at nighttime. Okay, so that's nowhere the prostration, the bowing and such, and the word prayer isn't even actually in the Arabic. Go ahead, y'all.
Okay, so I think at this stage we'll summarize that obviously this verse talks about prayer. There's certainly a the difference of opinion here between our Muslim guests and between the two Muslims themselves, but also between the non-Muslims about how many times you pray. Is, what sort of prayer should you be doing? Is there some sort of objective way that all Muslims should be praying? And I think it certainly seems from the non-Muslim point of view that there isn't.
And what if you don't?
Yes, exactly. And I don't think that's actually been answered. So maybe on the very last point, just a word from Oz and Benny on that question, because Stops did answer, and I didn't hear an answer. If there was, maybe it's I've missed it. Maybe just the two Muslims. What's the implication or the consequence of not praying? So Oz, do you want to go first?
The consequence of not praying, I thought, is a personal experience. In my personal experience, the consequence of not praying has been being what's it called, overwhelmed by materialism, to the point that I'm not even aware of my insignificance in the universe. I'm not even aware that in many honestly, I know you laugh. I would appreciate it if you didn't, because it is actually it's a deep personal experience for me. When I don't pray, when I don't prostrate, when I don't take time out and meditate in my prayer, I do get lost in materialism. It's a fact.
I was not laughing at you, by the way. I was laughing. I was chuckling, actually. Do you know why? I don't need prayer. I just go outside and I look up at the universe and I look at the stars and I look at the galaxies and I look at that. And that reminds me very quickly how insignificant I am. I don't need a prayer for that.
Do you do that regularly, or?
Yes.
Why does he have to? Why does he have to do it?
But regularly? I do. I admit this. I admit this, that I am severely humbled by going outside and looking how ridiculously small I am, standing here on the speck of dust at the border of some galaxy in some old place somewhere in the universe. That's all I need.
But Oz, let me just ask you this, because you gave your personal experience, which is fine. You feel like if you don't pray, you get overwhelmed with materialism. Let me rephrase the question a little bit more accurate. My apologies. And Benny, if you just listen to this and answer this specifically. So Oz, to you, what's the consequence? What does the Quran say is the consequence of not praying? Not your personal opinion, what it does for you or doesn't do for you in your personal life, but your understanding of the Quran. If you do not pray, what is your understanding from the Quran? What does the Quran say in your estimation? So focusing on the Quran and not your personal experience.
I think what the Quran is trying to say in its spirit, in the spirit of the Quran, is that if you don't pray according to the Quran, you get punished for it. What
is the punishment as you understand it?
As I understand it, that punishment is hell. If you want an objective response, that's how I understand it.
And when that?
I think the better question is how according to the Quran is what you're referring to, right?
Okay, that I don't know. You would have to ask Benny that question. I don't know this.
No, but you made the statement though.
Yeah, but that doesn't. I'm not gonna pretend I know something when I don't. If you want to know the specific.
But you follow it.
Yes, but not everybody knows every aspect of the thing they follow. You speak English and you're from an Anglo-Saxon society, but I doubt you know every single English.
That's a false equivalence, because what you just did was try to say that the outcome for not praying would be hell, and then you also attribute it to not praying according to the Quran.
Yes, but you just said to me that
So that's what I'm asking you. What is the Quran's prayer according to the words of Allah? And then if you look at it outside of that, then you're actually if you're using hadith to justify your prayer status, then you're actually going outside of the statement you just made.
Wait. Hang on. Wait, did you say what is the prayer according to the Quran, or what is the punishment specifically?
No, you said.
No, I'm trying to find out what your question is. I'm
using your words, sir. You said
opinion, right?
And one of your and just responding to Rob, you said that that you believe that not praying according to the Quran will get you in hell. So my question is, what is prayer according to the Quran?
Prayer according to the Quran is not substantiated, which undermines Benny's point, but it doesn't undermine my point. Prayer is substantiated in human.
I'm just asking you what it is. Can you elaborate what it is?
No, because it's not elaborated in the Qur'an. So no, I can't. It's elaborated in people's interaction with the Qur'an in the Middle East.
So it is elaborated in the Quran, though. It's elaborated that it occurs 3 times a day, that it's bow, prostrating, and reciting any part of the Quran that is easiest for you to remember.
It doesn't tell you what it is. The question was, what is prayer? The answer is, it doesn't.
Okay, well, let's assume
I just gave it to you that it does.
Okay, so
wait, hang on.
I think this is a separate point, though. Okay, so so you've given something that's in there. If we use the word supplication, that would cover prayer, right? You're going on to a different thing and you're asking specifically about the prayer, which I think is related to what you were talking about before. But
the response was, no, prayer is elaborated in the Quran because it says it's this, this, and this. But it doesn't say it's not this, this, and this, or it's limited at X, Y, and Z. It's substantiated in people's interaction with
Actually, it is substantiated. What I just gave you. What I just gave you is that it says it's 3 times a day. It's in that it's reciting any part of the Quran that is easiest for you while bowing and prostrating. That is defined. And the reason I brought that up is because if you're saying that you hold the belief that not praying will land you in hell according to the Quran, then you have to go according to the Quran about what prayer is.
No, okay, wait, hang on. What I was asked was an objective, descriptive question. I was asked, what does the Quran say about what happens to you if you don't pray? And according to my understanding of the Quran, leaving my feelings out of this, right, it says that you go to hell if you don't pray, right? Now, the question is, how do I feel about that? That's a different discussion.
I'm not so interested in what you feel about it. Right. I mean, because that would be your personal opinion.
Right.
And I think what Weiser is talking about is the specifics of the prayer. So, because obviously he's given that. So, given if that were the case, and you follow the Quran, that's a secondary topic that we could talk about. But if you agree that there is a form of prayer that needs to be done and it's in the Quran, the question that I asked you is, what happens if it doesn't? And you said you go to hell. And so, really,
no, sorry. He hasn't given the specifics, though. He said that in the Quran it says you have to do it 3 times a day, and etc., etc. But okay, what I'm trying to say is, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It doesn't say that you can't do it in such and such a way, and its limitations are here and here. And when it comes to foreign languages, you have to do it in a certain way, or you have to do it in Arabic. That's
what are you talking about?
I think that's a separate topic. I don't want to go down that route.
That's not what I'm talking about at all.
Yeah, okay, but why? So I think we need to move on from the specifics of the prayer itself, because you can have an entire show, maybe do a stream on your own, and we can invite the guys.
Okay, but I do have to go to work. But I would say, in response to that, Rob, if the prayer itself or the lack thereof is gonna land you in hell, then it would be important to know the specifics of it, or what is according to what Allah says will keep you from hell because of the prayer.
Yeah, okay, sure.
I have to. I have to go to work. I appreciate y'all letting me on.
But that's a different question.
So good to speak to you again.
Sorry, that's a massive red herring. I have to interject here. He said to me, it's important to know what the specifics of it are, right? But that's completely different to the question that I never said I do or don't know what the specifics are. He said to me, what are the specifics in the Quran? And in my view, the specifics are not in the Quran, right? That doesn't mean I don't know what they are. That just means that I feel like the specifics are elaborated and substantiated in the way that people practice the Quran. It's a red herring.
I don't really want to go down that route anymore. I think I think the argument can be made that the Quran and the Hadith give you some aspects of the prayer to whatever nuance or not nuance it is. But every Muslim pretty much agrees that there's some form of a prayer, and I think that could be an interesting topic on its own. What specifically does it say? Do you all agree, or whatever the case is? But I think every Muslim does agree that prayer, whatever that means to whatever Muslims, is something that you need to do. So finally, another Muslim's going to join us now. He feels like there's been a lot of false claims being spread, maybe by Muslims, maybe by us. We shall see when he comes in now shortly. Benny, I just want your view here. In terms of the prayer, obviously Oz felt like if you don't do it, what's the consequence? That was Stops' original point. So I'm going to go back to that, and then I think we do need to move on. Or if if the other Muslim comes in, maybe we'll have a few of his words and then we're going to move on. So Benny, what is your view about what is the consequences for not praying? If you're a Muslim and you decide I don't need to pray, what is the consequence according to you?
Okay, follow me.
Keep it short, please.
Yeah, I'll keep it short, but you have to follow. Because it's a little bit deep. In the prayer, we ask Allah to guide us. In the prayer, guide us, because guidance is not something given. Like, oh yeah, I'm now a Muslim. I did my shahada, and now I have guidance. So yeah, guidance is always with me. No, that's not how it works. You have to work on guidance. That means you have to be spiritually on a high level. Yeah, Benny? I will answer, but you have to
we're
follow.
not interested at the moment about what it is in the prayer. I want to know. But Benny,
if you don't pray, I will
tangents.
No, it connects. It connects.
No, it doesn't, Benny.
Yeah,
we're not interested in the substance of the prayer at the moment. We're interested in the consequences.
It is connected. If you don't pray, the guidance will go away. And when the guidance go away, you will turn a disbeliever, you will turn an atheist, or you turn something else. So the prayer is very important given in Muslim life. So if you don't pray, your iman. Sorry, can I please respond? What's wrong with you? You're always cutting me off.
Why do you feel turning atheist?
Okay.
Okay. So
wow, what's wrong with you?
What else do you want to say there? Yeah.
It's very important. Okay, just keep it short. If you don't pray, the consequences, you will lose your guidance.
Yes.
You will lose your faith. And what happens, you will end up in the hellfire. That's the consequence.
Okay, so you agree with Oz that if you don't do it, you'll follow certain things and you end up in hellfire because you're a disbeliever.
That's not what I said. I said that's what the Qur'an says.
But do you follow the Quran though, Oz?
I follow it spiritually.
That's being a little dishonest.
Spiritually, not literally. The words for me convey a greater meaning. I don't take it literally word for word. No.
Oh, okay. So you're going to be on very shaky ground, I think, going that route, because now you're using your subjectivity to interpret the Quran your own way, and I think you will butt heads with other Muslims here.
I totally agree, but I've never claimed in this discussion that the Quran is and Islam and religion is an objective experience. I've never claimed that, so it doesn't contradict my other views.
No, it may not contradict your views, but it'll contradict virtually every other Muslim's views that isn't a sort of a Sufi. But we have got Muhammad in here now. Muhammad, you've heard this. We want to move on eventually, but you claimed that there were a lot of things that were false claims. Yeah. So without going into a long story, you've got 3 minutes. Go.
No, not 3 minutes. I just need a few seconds. One.
Okay, go.
I want to carry on. Just basically, I think it was you or another brother that made a claim that why wasn't the prayers established in the first few years, and that's a lie. Because the prayers were established in the first few years. In the beginning of Muhammad's lifetime. In the hadith, the companions of the Prophet were praying by the mountains, and the Qurayshis used to see them. And the third time when they seen the Prophet, when they see the companions praying, they came and they had a little squabble where the Qurayshi threw stones at the companions. And they asked him, "Yo, we are secluding ourselves by the mountains. Why are you coming?" So basically, that's a long story cut short.
I understood that. How long after Gabriel revealed himself to Muhammad did that happen?
I would say max 2 years.
Okay, so why? But that's way after. Okay, but that's way after it. So why so religious point? Although it's kind of a side point. His point is that there was a big gap between the revelation and telling people to do the prayer. That was his point. And you've actually said, yes, you've actually agreed and said, no, it's even a longer period of time between them revealing and them being shown to pray.
Okay, no, I'm just saying the first time they were seen praying in public, that was the first time. However, they used to pray exclusively in their houses. I'm talking about the first public prayer where Abu Sufyan and the leaders of the Quraysh tribe seen them praying publicly by the mountain. That's the first time they seen them. However, the prayer was established in the beginning. So
okay, but when you say in the beginning, what do you mean by the beginning? It wasn't. Like, are you suggesting that the prayer happened shorter than 6 months? That was the shortest period that why so religious said that he believed the prayer happened. So there was this revelation from Muhammad in the cave, and then it took at least 6 months, if not longer, before it was established about the prayer. Are you suggesting that it was shorter or longer than 6 months?
I don't know about 6. I can't make the claim about 6 months. However, I know it was at the beginning of his.
Yeah, but you can't say the beginning, because the beginning it doesn't mean anything unless you can give a time frame. Was the beginning 5 minutes after he had the revelation, or 5 years?
Say that again, sorry.
When you say the beginning, that's just a general statement that's meaningless. You've got to give specifics if you're going to say the beginning, because Waisa made a very specific claim that it was at least 6 months, if not longer, after Muhammad had his revelation, and that for him was a long period of time. If this was so important, it should have happened much sooner. So the claim, when you say the beginning, what do you mean by the beginning? What time frame after Muhammad had his first revelation was prayer revealed?
Beneath a year. He was in Mecca before he migrated, so beneath a year.
I actually agree with what So I'm not sure where you're saying something's false. What is the false part?
Well, did he exactly use the word 6 months? If he did, then
go back and look at it. He said between 6 months and a year. That was his view. And you're agreeing with it. So I don't see what's false there. You're both agreeing that it happened significantly after. If we look at that short time period, that happened. It didn't happen like within the first week or the first hour or whatever the case is. That was his point.
Yeah, but then I forgot the claim after that, where he made a claim after because it was not established in the first few weeks. Then he made a claim after that. I forgot the claim.
He said,
have we established that what you said that this is wrong?
Yeah.
We've got rid of that. Okay, so you were mistaken in saying that this was wrong.
I might have misheard him, because if he says 6 months.
Okay, so then this one is closed. Next.
Yeah.
Okay, so have you got any other? Because we do need to move on. We're on one verse here. I mean, otherwise, anyway.
Yeah.
Have you got anything else you want to say based on what you've heard, and then we'll move on?
You made a claim that the Quran only claims 3 prayers, where it actually claims it's 5 prayers.
Slowly, speak a bit slower. You're a bit fast. Nobody can understand you. Try again.
I think someone made the claim that the Quran says there's 3 prayers only included within the Quran, and there's actually 5 prayers.
No, we've done that. No, please. We've looked at that. We've shown that is not true. Next.
Subhanallah, actually, it mentions 4 at minimum, and the 5th one is mentioned in Surah.
Okay, there's no point repeating it. We've done it. We've dealt with it. We've gone through the Quran. We've looked at the evidence. It's not the case. Next.
It is the case. According to our early sources.
I don't think the conversation actually ends there. I know that you feel that the discussion is closed, but it's genuinely not, because if something says that you should pray 3 times, it doesn't mean that it says you should not pray 5 times, and it doesn't mean that another surah might come later which substantiates that. So to claim that there is an objective way to pray in the Quran is just completely ridiculous. You can't say that.
I never said that. I said there's 5 prayers.
Sorry, not you. I'm a Muslim, not you. I was talking about why it's so religious. He said because the Quran also says when you make wudu, ablution, you wipe your head once, but then the Prophet wipes it back and forth. So clearly the way that the Quran and Islam is practiced is substantiated in the way that people practiced it. So there isn't an objective way that is specified in the Quran. It's later elaborated by people. Of course it is.
Yeah, but Oz, you just said in the Quran it was done once, and then Muhammad did it more than once. So in this case, we now have to ask you the question: do we follow the Quran with once, or do you follow Muhammad backwards and forwards? Because they are clearly 2 separate things.
That's a better question. That's a better question. I think that's the more relevant question. The other question, why so religious asks, is a mischaracterization. It's a total mischaracterization.
I think why so religious is asking, is there an objective way to pray? Because this is what we would expect, for God to lay out the rules of exactly what to do. Then everybody does it the same way, as opposed to some folding their arms, some leaving it open. That was his point on this. You could say, well, that's, as Benny said, that's not so important as long as you do the prayer and you face Mecca, blah, blah, blah. But then you are sidestepping the more nuanced discussion, which maybe is for another time, about the specifics of the prayer. Because again, if this is an all-powerful God, he could very easily give you the step-by-step instructions, clearly, concisely, that every Muslim would follow, and there would never be this discussion at all.
It doesn't matter how concise and specific the instructions are. Humans are imperfect, right? So I don't think that we could possibly know what God objectively wanted us to do. That's good.
No, Oz. I think that's faulty thinking. You're saying because humans are faulty, therefore we wouldn't know what God says. God is clear. Let me ask you this question, Oz. Can God send a message down that is so clear that every human with the ability and cognitive ability can understand it? Whether they follow it is a different thing, but can a God send a crystal clear message that everybody can understand?
Over what period of time?
Instantaneously.
Throughout humanity.
No, he can send a message at Muhammad's time that we could read from Muhammad to today, and every single human being that reads it in whatever language could understand it clearly, and there would be no interpretation. Is that possible for a God or not?
I don't think it's possible, no.
Okay, so you have a God that's very limited by the fallibility of his own creation. That's the implication of what you are saying.
Yes, but that doesn't necessarily undermine the point about God's existence. That's another discussion. Why would God create infallible creation is another discussion. But I don't think you should jump to the conclusion that that undermines God.
No, I'm not saying it undermines God, but I am saying it undermines your perfect or powerful God if you're going to claim that he's limited by the creation that he's created. So if he cannot send a message because he's created this, his creation is so unable to follow a clear message from its own creator, then the creator is lacking.
Yes, of course. I know the creation is lacking, but just because you can't assume
creator, right?
That's a false assumption. If a very good artist, you know what? I'm not even going to make a comparison. But the point is this. The point I'm saying this isn't a very controversial perspective. Just on a fundamental level, if I look at a color, I don't know if I'm seeing the same gray that you're seeing. There are so many variables that come into perception. That's why I think everything is a subjective experience. I believe that. I don't think.
Do you think what God says is subjective as well?
I think how we understand it inevitably is subjective.
I'm not asking, okay, but I'm not asking you what we as human beings doing. I'm asking you, can God send something objective, or is everything God's going to send subjective from his point of view, not ours?
It's highly possible. You know what? Actually, yes, I would say it's 99% possible that there is an objective reality and an objective message that as humans we need to try our best to interpret that. That's why I think that religious experience is subjective. And I don't apologize for that opinion. I don't think it's a controversial view. I really don't.
Yeah, but we're not asking whether, well, possibly we are asking that, but that's a separate question as to whether God can send a message that everybody can clearly understand.
No, because we have a subjective experience. That's my opinion. I'm sorry, I can't lie and pretend that like.
But I think that your assumption is faulty. Okay, we're going to move on from that. I mean, I think let me ask the other Muslims, Benny and Muhammad, can God send a message so clear that every human could understand it? We're not saying that they would necessarily implement it perfectly, but could God send a clear and concise message? Has he got the ability to do so that every human who read it would understand it perfectly?
100%. Yeah, he can.
Okay. That's the traditional view, and I think if you do hold to an all-powerful or a maximally powerful God, you have to take that position. So
and the Quran says it. The Quran says it's written in clear.
That is limited by his creation.
The Quran says it's written in clear and concise words in it, and the Quran also makes it clear. The Quran also makes clear that some verses are mutashabah, so some verses are ambiguous, and some verses are clear and precise.
Right.
And those who are deviant in their hearts will go to the ambiguous verses. So the Quran makes both claims that the Quran is clear and concise, and there are some ambiguous verses in there.
Muhammad, listen, yeah, your views will change eventually. You will have different opinions on what you interpreted the Quran next year. You had different opinions last year. So if everything is so clear as what you're saying, then your understanding of the Quran since you were a child till now should be exactly the same. And it's not. I know it's not. So there is an element of subjectivity.
It is because I don't take your interpretation, because I go by the scholarly classical interpretation. So
wait.
We go by the what's it called, and the traditional interpretation that the Sahaba and the companions did. So I don't go by my interpretation, my ta'wil of the Quran. I don't just read and say, yo, it's saying this X, Y, and Z. I go by the interpretation of the
my interpretation. My question is your understanding of what the Sahaba and what the Quran is trying to tell you, has it been exactly the same since you were born until now? Have you never changed in any point of your understanding of the Quran? Because if you have, then you can't tell me that it's so crystal clear as what you're saying. Clearly, if you've changed your opinion on something, then your subjective experience as a human has come into play.
Let me ask you this, Oz, just to clear this up, Oz. Is there what is the view about eating pork, Oz, in the Quran?
It's according to Islam, it's haram to eat pork.
Can you take a subjective view and believe tomorrow that in fact it is okay to eat pork?
It's very difficult to reach that conclusion.
Would you agree that that specific injunction is an objection, that is an objective injunction that every Muslim who reads that verse will come to the same conclusion? Would you agree with that?
On that specific point, it's nearly 100% probably objective, yes.
Okay, well, let's go with 100, because I can't see how you can go 99%. If it says don't eat pork,
I'm trying to be coherent, because
it's actually good.
They're very abstract, and it's but there are reasons I say 99%. But
so the question, you see, you're in more trouble than Muhammad is, from my point of view, because I've just given you a verse that is crystal clear that every Muslim, there's no Muslim who can honestly be a Muslim and say they follow the Quran that says no, it's okay to eat pork. Right. The verse is so clear that nobody, unless they are retarded or cannot read.
I agree. Most people say it's haram. Yes.
Right. So why is it? So Oz, why is it that the entire Quran is not like that?
The religious experience, most of it is subjective. It is. If it wasn't,
that I understand you saying that. Well, I'm not objecting to what you claim to be subjective. What I'm asking is, if there's a pork verse that is so clear, why isn't it that God can't do the same for everything else, like prayer, like everything else? And your claim is no. Your claim is, hey, no, people couldn't understand it, but I've just given you an example that is crystal clear that you agreed everybody could understand. And if God was that clear with a prayer, hey, you do this, here's your 10 steps, one after another. Are you still suggesting that people would take that subjectively and do the steps in a different order, or wouldn't understand them?
That wasn't my answer to your question. Was the reason why that there are other things that we subjectively interpret is because we as humans are limited, and I think that's a biological fact. Like, that's not really.
No, it's God. The question is, why can't God, not humans, God? Why does God not do that?
Because his creation is limited. That's my opinion.
I get what the brother's saying, though.
No, but Muhammad, you're stronger ground. Oz, if the Quran said, number one, you face towards Mecca. Number two, you get on your knees. Number three, you prostrate with your head to the ground. And number four, you say surah, the first surah. I can't remember the specific name. If those were the 4 steps, can you honestly say to me that there's any Muslim who would go, nope, I think I'm going to not do it in those 4 easy to follow steps. I'm going to stand and do it, and I'm still going to say I'm subjectively doing what the Quran says.
No, that's not I wouldn't say that, but that's not my argument. There are areas, if you want to go down that route, there are areas where it's generally very uncontroversial. Like, obviously, if it's eating pork, halal or haram, we would all agree it's haram. It's drinking halal or haram, we would all agree it's haram, right? But there's a substantial body of the religion where our subjective interpretation comes into play.
Is that okay? So let me finally, and then we'll move on. Do you believe that God, with the Quran, is supposed to have sent a clear, concise, complete, and error-free message, or do you think the Quran is a subjective message that can be interpreted in 100 or 1,000 different ways?
It's a subject. It can be interpreted in hundreds and thousands of different ways, and people that claim to know it, people that claim to know the objective truth, I think that's an arrogant statement, because, like,
and there you have it. Exactly. That's exactly the point. And this is, and I'm very grateful that you're doing that, because somebody like Muhammad will say, no, but this is exactly the point. Everybody agrees with you. Everybody agrees with you, but they are saying, well, but I'm substituting that with my favorite scholar. So your outlook is incredibly wobbly, but it's honest. And this is why
I would say that's a total contradiction to the Quranic claim, because the Quran claims is clear and precise. And as I said, there are
it's not. We know that it's not. It's full of nonsense.
But Muhammad, you've also agreed that there are some verses that are clear and some that are ambiguous.
100%. The Quran makes that claim itself.
Okay, so when you say that the Quran is clear, concise, and error-free, you're saying some verses. You've got to be more accurate, because otherwise, people who are listening might come with the conclusion that you're saying the entire book is, but yet you've already said that the entire book is not that way.
I'm talking about the majority right now, because the Quran says those who got deviant. So basically, there's some verses like Alif Lam Ra. It's like you saying ABC, and someone's trying to interpret that. So the Quran
nobody knows what that means.
There's some verses that are ambiguous, totally ambiguous, and people who are deep in the heart try to give some false interpretation just to suit their agenda. and try to come up with it. So that's what I'm trying to say. However,
hearing word salad here, really, like nothing makes sense.
From a what's it called, Muslim perspective,
From your
someone who says from a Muslim traditional conservative perspective, we believe the Quran to be precise and concise, because Allah makes that claim. Whoever says total contradiction. Yeah, go on.
First of all, do you believe in evolution? Secondly, Ibn Khaldun, who believed in evolution, do you think he's a Muslim or a kafir?
Do we want to go there?
Well, it's on his point, because he's saying that his perspective of the Quran is the Muslim perspective. So that addresses this point.
I think
this is going to be an endless discussion.
Yeah, when one says, what's it called, there are 100,000 interpretations, I believe the problem is coming where the brother, what's it called, aluminium, I don't know his name, Arab Aluminium, where he interprets the Quran himself, solely himself. I believe that who interprets the Quran? Who gives you the authority to interpret the Quran?
I interpret just like you do. I interpret other people.
I interpret myself.
Sorry.
I don't interpret myself.
Me and you, we both interpret the Sahaba, right? I also refer to other scholars, which you will tell me are outside the fold of Islam. For example, you will say that Ibn Rushd or Ghazali or Ibn Khaldun are outside Islam. That's fine. But we both interpret other people's message that they tell us what is the object. You refer to the Sahaba who tell you this is how you do it, right? But what you don't acknowledge is the role of perception and subjectivity between your understanding of what the Sahaba are telling you and what the Sahaba are saying. That's what you're not acknowledging.
Oz, can I ask you a question, Oz? Can I ask you a question? Do you see Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as your authority? Yeah. That means everything he says, you accept. You say, yes, I obey. Do you see that way? Or you just say, oh, it's just his subjective opinion or whatever?
You see, you've made a dichotomy between two points of views that aren't mutually exclusive. Do I think he's my authority? Yes, I do. Do I have the audacity as a mortal, as a human that's insignificant in the universe, to claim that I definitely understand the exact intentions of somebody that lived 1,400 years ago and exactly what he was trying to tell me to do? No, of course I don't have that audacity. I recognize that I might be wrong in what I understand Muhammad was telling me to do is. There is a role there for false perception. I do acknowledge that. Of course I do.
Listen, I don't get your views though. I think you have some liberal views here. Because according to us, we believe the Quran says, Adi'u Allah wa Adi'u Rasul. So we know the Prophet's interpretation of the Quran, so the Hadith, the Sunnah, the actions of the Prophet are clear to me. I don't know if it's clear to the other brother here, but it's clear to myself and the companions. So we follow the first 3 generations of the Prophet.
I understand. No, so Muhammad, you don't. Don't you understand that Oz is just being honest, and that what you are doing is you're saying, well, I don't know how to pray because... Can I just finish? You don't know how to pray because the Quran doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you how to make wudu, for example. And yet you tell me that, you know, now Muhammad said, I'm going to do it twice. Then he said, well, I'm going to make it 3 times. Now, which one do you follow? You don't know whether it's once from the Quran, twice from Muhammad, or 3 times from Muhammad. So you have to go to a scholar who is going to interpret this for you and tell you what you need to do is twice. So you are following neither a God nor Muhammad, but a human scholar. And Oz is saying, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to say I'm giving myself leeway that I am a human, and I accept that I can misunderstand a couple of things here. So I'm going to interpret it the way that I see the intention to be there. And that is just simply...
You're totally mistaken, brother. I can answer you here. So you made a claim the Quran says once and the Hadith says 3. According to the Quran, you're trying to differentiate between the Quran and Sunnah, trying to act like these two.
I'm looking at the instructions.
Let me finish. The Quran says, وَمَا أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ إِلَّا لِتُبَيِّنَ. So the Quran gives authority to the explanation of the Quran. So right by now, we got prayers, but we don't know how to pray. So when the Quran says, refer back to Allah, and who else? Wa Rasul. So refer back to Allah and His Messenger. So when we in clear differences, the Quran says, refer back to Allah and His Messenger. When we refer back to the Messenger, it tells us what to do. So what you're trying to do, a false dichotomy here.
No, he doesn't. This is the point. Muhammad, why are you being so dishonest?
How am I being dishonest?
This is not true. What you are saying is not true.
What's not true? What's not clear? Just tell me what's not true. Yeah.
Do you have different madhabs which give you a different position for prayer?
I don't follow madhabs.
This is exactly the point.
I
You
don't
have
care.
decided
You can't-
for
you can't
yourself
say
whom
it.
you follow and
No. The Quran tells me who to follow. The Quran says to me, refer back to Allah and His Messenger. It doesn't say to me, refer back to Allah, His Messenger, and the madhabs. You feel me?
Muhammad,
this is what Why So Religious was asking. Do
You're
you
doing
have your
strongman
hands
arguments
above
again.
or below your belly button? You don't
You're a
know.
strawman. This guy just, you know what you do? You make strawman and then you attack the strawman. So when you say there are some madhabs and why you're not following the madhab, I don't follow it. So I'm going to tell you my position.
Muhammad,
As a person who follows the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet.
Can I just make the thing clear? Because I think that you're not. Look, yeah, I'm not attacking you. Yeah, I'm genuinely trying to understand this. You're saying that you follow the Sahaba, the first 3 generations. You follow what the Prophet does, right? Now, what I'm trying to say to you is, how can you be certain that your understanding of what the Sahaba is telling you to do is crystal clear? Because if that's the case, then I presume that you describe yourself as someone that follows the Salaf, right? As somebody that follows the Salaf, I expect you to not change your opinion on any theological issue for the next 10 years. If you think that you
100%.
have... Come on, that's so unreasonable, bro. You're going to...
How? Just give me an example. Give me an example. Because you're making a claim that's unsubstantiated.
Why do you think it's unreasonable?
Of course he's going to change his view about something.
Why? No, you're making that statement as if that's a fact. Why should he?
I know. Okay, that's a good point. You make a good point there. Fine. I won't make that assumption. But what I'm saying is, it's really unreasonable. It's really unreasonable to assume that you know the exact intentions and the exact message of 3 generations that lived 1400 years ago. I also try to follow them. I'm the same as you. I want to follow these people, right? But I can't claim that I know exactly what they were trying to tell me. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
No. So what's the Quran and the Salaf? What are they for then? If you can be wrong, you can be right. There's no point of them in it. So what I'm trying to say to you,
the whole point. It's useless.
We have. Go on, carry.
Okay, I think we're going to move it on. I'm going to summarize it as follows, and I think at some point we have to move on, right? Muhammad's point is he thinks that there is, quote unquote, an objective way to do things. Although what undermines that is all the different interpretations and different madhabs, etc. Oz goes, no, there's no objective way. It's subjective, and everybody does it. So his view mirrors more of what appears to happen in reality. However, his view undermines the Quran and the message that God is sending. So Muhammad has a stronger point in the sense, to me anyway, that he's trying to be consistent with what he expects a God to do. But that's undermined by what happens in reality. Whereas Oz's point seems to be he matches reality more, but that undermines the clear and concise message that an all-powerful God should send. So I think you both have a point, but you also both are undermined in one way or another. That seems to me.
Rob, the problem here is you're saying that this undermines reality. And we believe some people are deviant, so the Quran calls people deviant. So those
are the madhabs deviant?
I wouldn't class them devious. No.
Okay, so they have a different opinion. They are much more scholarly than you. So you're not in a position to question them unless you can bring the evidence, and in which case you would have to go and challenge them directly.
The problem here is the Hanafi, the Shafi'i, the Maliki, the Hanbali, they make claims according to the Quran and Sunnah. However, what we do as Salafs in it, so the claims that they make have to be substantiated with the Quran and Sunnah.
Of course. If it's not, do you think these people are just dreaming it up? They will have sources, won't they?
Exactly.
No, there's some mistakes though. There's something that they
challenge them on that. At this moment in time, I don't think you're in a position to do that because you're just making a wild claim. If you bring the evidence, I tell you what. Here's what you can do. We will do a short show if you want to bring evidence versus one of the Hanbali or whichever one, and I'll get one of.
You had to make me refute the full madhab. What we as Salafis do is basically we're not muqallid, blind followers. So there's some people who blind follow Maliki, blind follow Hanbali, blind follow Shafi'i. So what we do is we take from them and we reject something from them. You feel me?
So you cherry pick the bits that you like and the bits you don't like, you reject.
No, it's not about something we like, something we don't like. If someone's making a claim, like, I can bring some examples for you, but I don't think this is a show for it.
Wait, Muhammad, you said some people are deviant, right? Now, the thing is, I actually think that my view is actually quite consistent with Islam because Islam tells me that there is nothing perfect other than God, and human beings are imperfect. That's why we make tawbah, that's why we sin, that's why we repent and we forgive and forget and regret things, right? So as somebody that recognizes my own limitations and my own fallibility as a mere mortal, I know that even if I try to follow the Salaf, I might have understood something incorrectly. I think that's quite an Islamic attitude. I don't think it's fair to call that an attitude.
The Quran, okay, the Quran makes a claim in the Deen in the light of Islam. Today we have perfected the religion. Perfected the religion. That includes the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Salaf. So once it's perfected, it's there, it's concrete, it's for you to follow.
Yes,
so when you try to...
are not perfect. You, the perceiver of the perfected, are imperfect.
I agree with that point, but I'm talking about the message itself is perfect. It's there, it's concrete. So for one to...
My point is your perception perfect? Can you claim to know exactly what the Salaf are trying to tell you? That's my point.
Yes, because it's in English, isn't it? I can read it.
Oh, come on, bro.
Yeah, but there's more to it than that, Muhammad. You've got to understand it. I think let's move on. We're still on the first verse here. As I say, I think I've summarized it. The point that undermines Arab thing is that this is Oz's position is this is not what we would expect from a creator. The thing that undermines Muhammad's point of view is this is not what we see in reality. We've got all these different interpretations, 4 schools of madhab, etc. They can't all agree, and we would expect that. But let's move on from this now. Otherwise, we're just never going to get anywhere else. So I'm going to move on to Surah 112. We've done one surah here. I think this is the, while it's great to have such a big panel here, not everybody gets a chance to say something. Thunderous, did you want to say something there?
11.
We're on 111. We're not on 112.
Sorry, are we on 111? Then my apologies. Okay, so we are on 111. Okay, so
well, it depends. There are different Qurans with different
sorry, let me share the screen. Yeah, I haven't shared the screen here. Let me just share the screen here. I'm not sure we're going to get past this next one, but let's see. So here's Surah 2, 111. Sahih International, and they say none will enter paradise except one who is a Jew or a Christian. That is merely their wishful thinking. Say, produce your proof if you should be truthful. Yusuf Ali, and they say none shall enter paradise unless he be a Jew or a Christian. Those are their vain desires. Say, produce your proof if ye be truthful. Okay, so what's the view on that, guys? Anybody can jump in.
Well, kind of obvious, really, that the Jews and the Christians don't share the same thoughts on this one. So how can the Jews and the Christians be united in their opinion that they together will think that they'll enter paradise? The Jews don't accept the Messiah, and the Messiah, Jesus in this parlance, turned around and said to them that their house was abandoned to them. That's why you have the difference between the Jews and the Christians. So to suggest that the Jews and the Christians will be going into paradise together makes the whole point of Jesus's sacrifice as in vain. What was the point of him being the Messiah then, if Jews are going to get into paradise anyway? So
yeah, this is another. I agree. This is another misunderstanding that the people had who wrote the Quran.
Yeah, clearly Muhammad did not know the difference. He just thought that Jesus was just another prophet saying the same old thing, and that there wasn't any spiritual difference between the Jews and the Christians. He's clearly got this wrong.
Okay, but obviously the Muslims don't believe that he was the son of God. He was just a prophet. So what specifically have they got wrong there?
Well, the Jews and the Christians, well, for starters, you have to understand, what did Muhammad or what did Muslims now understand about paradise? To a Muslim, paradise isn't here on earth, but it's up in heaven somewhere, a spiritual dimension. Whereas to Jews and the Christians, paradise was here on earth. Adam and Eve were created on earth. They weren't created in the spirit realm and then sent from the spirit realm after they, if we follow what Benny said, they made a covenant in heaven, because all human beings, all billions of us, were in heaven before we came to earth, and we agreed our covenant in heaven, remember, before we came to earth, and in heaven is where paradise is, not earth. But that's not what the Jews and the Christians believe. The Jews and the Christians believe in the Edenic covenants, where Eden was here on earth.
The Jews don't have a physical paradise at all.
Can I clarify something? Allah knows best, but I didn't say heaven. I say maybe it's in heaven that you did I don't know for sure.
Benny, you have a tendency of opening your mouth and not knowing what you talk about. It has to be in heaven because that's where the angels are and the jinns are, right? And that's where all the angels and the jinns were asked by Allah to bow down to Adam. So it has to be in heaven. Where else could it be?
Yeah, but yeah, Adam, you're right, correct. But we all humans before we came, when we are as a soul. I don't know if we were in heaven. I don't know. I'm not sure. Allah knows best.
If you do not know, don't use your default disclaimer when you don't have an answer by saying Allah knows best. We know that you don't know, and if you don't know, just perhaps not make a comment, please.
Yeah, I think, Benny, just be careful of saying that. Let me hear from the other Muslims. Mohammed and Oz, what is your view? Because Benny's view was, and maybe he's sort of being, couching his view now, but his view was that every human, made a covenant with God before they came to earth. What's
it's
your
still
guys'
my view? It's still my view. The only point I said, I don't know if it's in heaven we made a covenant, but that we made a covenant is still my view. It's in the Quran. Sorry.
But Benny, where else would you make it? If humans did it before they were born, where else would it have been if not heaven?
I don't know. I cannot say it. I have to check it out. I don't know. Sorry.
What else is there, Benny? I mean, that's the default position. Either it's heaven or hell, right? Where else is there? There is nowhere else.
But Benny, with the greatest respect, I think there should be a rule on Benny now. Do not make a comment unless you can cite a source, because for weeks now you make comments, but you never cite a source, and then you go to Allah knows best.
I agree. With one second, bro. 1 second. I agree with this, brother. Even though me and him we disagree all the time, but he's correct here. He's not on earth.
Okay, so have you got a source for that, Mohammed?
What's the problem here?
Yeah. Have you got a source in the Hadith that suggests that it is heaven? Just so we know. I think it's a minor point because it would have to be of heaven, as Thunderous says, unless it was hell, which that obviously doesn't make sense. So, and it couldn't have been on earth because they would have had to have done it before they came to earth.
Yeah. Correct. Because there's a conversation between Adam and what's it called, Moses.
I'm not sure how that well, it enters paradise because obviously Thunderous was saying he views that that Eden was paradise.
No, I don't view it's what the Bible teaches. Eden was just a garden. Everything that you find described in the Bible is here on earth. I can point out so many scriptures that show that Adam and Eve were here on earth, and indeed, when you look at the scriptures that point to post-Armageddon, it's here on earth. It isn't about dying and go to some other location. There is no scripture to substantiate that point. So, and even if we just leave that as a side point, the fact that you've got Jews and Christians speaking in unity, that they are in agreement and they're both going to get the same reward, is not consistent with what the Bible teaches anyway. And you can see that by the Jewish and the Christian relationship, and they both have the different doctrines as to how far they understand the Bible in the first place. The Jews only go up to Malachi at best, whereas the Christians go from Genesis all the way to Revelation.
Yeah, the Quran doesn't say that. The Quran doesn't say the Jews and the Christians. It says Jews or the Christians. So they say no. Look at the verse.
Let's read it. Read it again.
Read it again.
None will enter paradise except one who is a Jew or a Christian. So when
or a Christian,
is not an it's not an exclusive or, that's an inclusive or. That's not an exclusive or, Benny. That's you could substitute that with and. So
no,
you can't make the claim that it's
read
separate.
the next verse. Then you understand. Read the next verse.
Yeah, we're coming to that. In any case, I think the problem here, Thunderous, is that you're arguing different books. You're claiming that it doesn't follow the Quran. That the Bible doesn't meet what the Muslims will say, hey, well, the Bible's corrupted anyway, and we've corrected this. So you're all arguing seemingly from a point of, hey, my book says this, his book says this. I don't think you can get anywhere on that point.
Okay, even if you forget the books there, I take your point there, Rob. Even if you forget the book, the fact that he's got the Jews and the Christians simultaneously going to one location as though to suggest that both of them have got the same law doesn't make any sense.
Well, I suppose, again, a Muslim could argue that to
be a Christian.
That's not what the Quran says. That's not what the Quran says.
Hang on.
To be a Christian, but by implication, you are somebody who follows Christ. That's why you're a Christian. So a Jew, so the laws of Christ are different to the laws that are the Mosaic laws. The whole way the Mosaic law was different to the law of Christ, the Golden Rule, and so on. So how could you suggest that both of them are one and the same when they're clearly not?
Okay, but
they can't have the same reward, can they? And even from the Islamic recension, Okay, you have a hadith that says, was it Muhammad gave an illustration about when some workers were sent out, which is a plagiarism of what Jesus said, that the Jews worked till 12 o'clock and then they handed over the work to the Christians, and the Christians worked till 3 o'clock, and then they gave up on the work, and then the Muslims take over the work and from 6 o'clock until 12 o'clock at night, so they get the full reward. Muhammad gave the illustration, so that counts the Jews and the Christians out.
Read the next verse. You misunderstood the verse. It doesn't say both going. The Jews say, we are going to paradise. And the Christians say, no, we are going to paradise.
No, they don't say that. They don't even
that's what the verse implying. You read the next verses. And
Here's the next verse. All right, let's move on to the next verse because Benny's adamant about this. Sahih International. Yes. On the contrary, whoever submits his face in Islam to Allah while being a doer of good will have his reward with his Lord, and no fear will there be concerning them, or will they grieve? Or Yusuf Ali, nay, whoever submits his whole self to Allah and is a doer of good, he will get his reward with his Lord, or such shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. How does that somebody's dropped out. I'm not sure who left there. Oh, it was Mohammed. How does that establish what you just claimed, Benny?
Or maybe the next verses. Maybe I'm mistaken with the other verse.
Benny, can I ask you, Benny?
Yeah.
Can I ask you, because you're on the panel, you can mute yourself. Can you go and actually open a Quran and go and check these things? Because otherwise you're taking out some
Yeah, but there's a maybe I'm mistaken with this verse, but there's a verse in. Maybe we'll see it. We will see it.
Yes, maybe we will, maybe we won't. Go and look it up for yourself. That's what you're being asked to do, and we're going to ask you a little bit more of that because you're making
the problem
claims
is that the next one does actually mention that, but it contradicts him.
So again, my understanding is here, hey, if you do what Allah asks you and you're a doer of good, which presumably is whatever Allah tells you, then you'll get your reward, essentially. I mean, is there anything anybody wants to say on this particular verse, or should we go to the next one, which presumably will actually be what stops us talking about?
I just want to point out that this one will be contradicted later.
This verse here. Okay, so we'll keep this. We'll come back to this. I'm going to duplicate this if we get a chance and go there. So, all right, so that's 112. I've got a copy of it here so we can come back and see where. So Stops has made a prediction. He's going to be a prophet now, and we'll see if there's a hopefully on this show. So 113 Sahih International. The Jews say the Christians have nothing true to stand on, and the Christians say the Jews have nothing to stand on.
Yes, this is the verse.
The scripture. Thus the polytheists speak the same as their words, but Allah will judge between them on the day of resurrection.
This is the verse I'm talking about. This is the verse. Now you understand the previous verses.
Can I finish, please? I know you're getting very excited there. Let me finish the verse before you go off getting excited. But Allah will judge them on the day of resurrection concerning that over which they used to differ. And Yusuf Ali, the Jews say the Christians have naught to stand upon. The Christians say the Jews have naught to stand upon. Yet they profess to study the same book. Like unto the word is what those say who know not. But Allah will judge between them in their quarrel on the day of judgment. Okay, right, go ahead.
This is what I mean. This is explaining the previous verses that the Jews say, yes, we are the chosen people. We are going to paradise. And the Christians say, no. We are the chosen people because you're rejecting the Messiah. Like Thunderous said, he was correct on that. No, we are the chosen people because we follow the Messiah as the Son of God and, he's God, whatever. So we are going to paradise. And Allah is clearly put him on their place and say, no. If you want to go to paradise, submit yourself. Don't let everybody else submit.
Hang on a moment, and we'll bring Thunderous in now on this one, and then let's have Oz and Muhammad after that. But Benny, he says they profess to study the same book. I think Jews and Christians will clearly say they don't necessarily study exactly the same book. There might be some crossover. What's your view on that, Thunderous? And then
the Bible.
Benny, please be silent. The Jews, well, it depends which Jews, and we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago where you got two types of Jew. You got the Orthodox and the Unorthodox. Now, bearing in mind, this is the 6th century, all right? So you got the Orthodox, which have now become those who follow the Talmud. Those are the Orthodox Jews now by the 6th century. The unorthodox Jews are those who follow basically Genesis all the way to Malachi, which is the Hebrew scriptures. How do we know this? Well, we know this because Muhammad, in his infinite wisdom, he includes stories, not just the popular ones that are characterized in the Bible from the Hebrew scriptures, but he also brings in stories that are in from the Talmud too. So we know he's getting his stories from both Jewish sections, the Talmud Jew and the Genesis to Malachi Jew. So you've got two types of Jew there. But he's also talking about the Christian. He takes Genesis all the way to the book of Revelation. So it's one. It isn't one book, so to speak. The Jews, you have the Talmud Jew, or you got the Jew that goes from Genesis to Malachi, and then the Christian that goes from Genesis all the way to the book of Revelation.
So do you agree with this verse that in fact they profess to study the same book, but they don't actually study the same book? You don't. Are you saying that you actually don't study the same book?
Before he does that, can he retract his statement before Thunderous? Can you retract your statement that you thought that both are going to paradise? Can you do that, please?
No, I'm not.
Retract that, bro. Retract that, man. Come on.
No, I'm not going to do that because that will be brought up later on. You haven't let the Quran speak, Benny. Let the Quran speak, and it will be brought up.
Thunderous, I don't see your claim here, man. What are you claiming? Because you talk, but you don't claim nothing.
Stops. It was not stops. What's the M stacks? Really?
Yeah, what happened? I want to see what are you claiming though. I'm not trying to offend you. I'm not trying to offend you. I just want to know what you're claiming, so I can try to,
The claim is there's two types of Jew. The Jew that follows the Talmud, and then you got the Jew that follows Genesis all the way to Malachi. So there's two groups of Jews there. By implication, in today's standard or essential, we call them the Orthodox and the unorthodox Jew. So there isn't just one bunch of Jews. It's a bit like, even though you got many sects of Christianity, they all follow Genesis to Revelation. It's how they interpret Genesis to Revelation that makes them differ.
So Thunderous, if I understand,
you're totally wrong. Yeah, you're totally what kind of?
Hang on a moment.
He's only referring to the Jews that are living in the Arabian Peninsula.
But Thunderous, are you claiming that somewhere in the next few verses or within the Quran, Muhammad himself will specify what you are saying?
Yes.
Okay. No, do you know where that is?
Off my head, no.
He's making it up, man. He's making it up, bro, man.
Okay, I'm making it up.
Can I just summarize this? The point that we're trying to do in 111, we saw that somebody said no one will enter paradise except if you're a Jew or a Christian. And then we are told this is wishful thinking. In other words, this is not true that no one will enter paradise except Jews or Christians. Okay? Now what you are saying is, well, this is not nonsense, because it's going to be explained later. Now you said in 113, this is explained because it says the Christians have no basis, the Jews have no basis. Now, how the hell does this explain anything in 111? That I don't see.
Try to rephrase that. Stops. Even I didn't follow. Well, I say even I'm not the smartest guy. I didn't follow you clearly there. So can you break that down?
Well, if you go to 111.
Let's go back.
If you go back to 111 and you look at the claim there, no one will enter paradise except the Jews or Christians. Okay, some say, all right, some say, they say, no one will enter paradise except Jews or Christians. So this is the thing that somebody has said, you need to be a Jew or a Christian in order to enter paradise. But now we have Islam coming around. So they say this is wishful thinking because now we have Islam and actually the Muslims are the ones who go to paradise and not Jews and Christians. All right. Now, this doesn't make sense because Jews and Christians don't have the same concept of paradise. So somebody mixed up the stuff here because there's a misunderstanding with paradise. Now, what Benny was saying is this will be explained in 113. Now you go to 113.
Okay, before you do that,
he's waffling now, man.
Hang on a moment.
Christians have no basis, Jews have no basis, but this doesn't explain either. It is still wrong what the Quran says in 111.
Can I please? Okay, 111, Thunderous made a claim that that both the Christians and the Jews go both. They claim they go both to heaven.
No, that's not the claim. No.
I'm just responding to Thunderous. Thunderous said, but that's not true because the Jews don't follow Messiah, blah, blah. And I said, no, that's not what the verse says. It says they are all inclusive, not all inclusive. Like
bro, can I just make a claim?
And the 113 explains that.
Hang
They're
on.
trying
what I
to,
mean?
they're trying basically what they're trying to do is trying to make a claim out of nothing. The Quran says وَقَالُوا لَنْ, so the Jews and Christians both make the claim that we're gonna go to paradise, and the Jews say we're gonna go to paradise. Allah what's it called, rebukes both of them and say, yo, both of you are not gonna go to paradise, and if you're truthful, provide your evidence. And then ayah 113 explains it even more, as the brother said. So let's go into it 1 second. Let's read it. Let's read it.
Okay, hang on a moment. Let's do it, because Stops is saying, I want to make sure I'm understanding this. And they say, who is they here?
So the Jews, so it says وَقَالُوا لَنْ, so the Jews and Christians, this is
So
both
the Jews
of
and
them.
Christians say none will enter paradise except one who is a Jew or a Christian. So in other words, if one had to write that better, assuming I was a Christian, I would say, hey, nobody but myself or
Yeah.
Jews would enter paradise, right?
No, if you were a Christian, you would say, I'm going paradise. And if you were a Jew, you would say, I'm going paradise.
Well,
So
exactly.
both of them,
That's what I'm saying. That's kind of what the verse says. None
okay.
except those who are
No, Rob. No.
Come
You've
on,
just
yo,
caused
let him
confusion.
finish. Come on.
No,
right.
the point is that if I am a Christian, I will say I am going to go to paradise, and so can a Jew, because they say it
No,
is
no,
not
no, no, no,
specified
no.
that only
No,
one
that's
said
not what
that.
the verse say. The verse
Nah,
say,
this guy's lying now, man.
hold on,
Totally
okay,
lying.
wait. Let me explain. If you're a Christian, you will say, we Christians go to paradise. You're not gonna say, oh, also the Jews. You know what I mean? And that's the whole point.
Then why is it that
You don't follow.
listen,
It
Follow.
says the Jews will say we go to paradise, and the
Yes,
Christians say
only
we go to paradise.
Yeah,
yes,
but
yes,
that's
So
explicitly.
the two
Yeah.
groups
Yes.
are saying we can go to paradise.
No, we,
No,
not we.
not both.
I.
Yeah,
It's
not both at the
Okay.
same time.
That's why in
Exclusivity.
the book of Hebrews, there's a misunderstanding, and in the book of Romans, this is why today you have many Christian denominations saying that the Jews will inherit because God has not forgotten his covenant with them. So the many Christian denominations apply that still today, that the Jews are still God's covenant people. You even see that in American politics. You even see that.
bro, you're making 1 second, Rob. The claim here is the Jew will come and say, yo, I'm going to paradise. The Christian will then come and say, I'm going to paradise. But Allah is saying, if you're truthful, provide your evidence. Then Allah says, the Jew claims. 1 second.
If Muhammad is truthful, he's got to prove that they're not going to go to paradise. Then where's his?
1 second. No. Let's not get too subjective. The Quran is making a claim that the Jew is saying, I'm going to paradise. We're trying to interpret what the Quran is saying here, not what the Bible is saying. You feel me? Because when I go to the Bible, you say, yo, I'm changing the subject. So let's not go into it. So the Quran is saying the Jew will claim to go to paradise and the Christian will claim it. But Allah rebukes both of them and say, if you're truthful, provide your evidence. And ayah 113 further explains ayah 111, which says both of you claim to follow the Torah. However, both of you have different interpretation, which is totally correct, because the Jews deny the Messiah, and then you claim that the Messiah is prophesied in the I believe Isaiah 53. However, Allah then says, 1 second. Yes, they do. They don't believe Jesus was the Messiah. So let's carry on now.
That's a different statement.
Can I finish? So Allah then says he will judge between both of them on the day of judgment. So I don't see no contradiction here. You're just making baseless claims and trying to, I don't know.
Okay, do the Jews say we will enter paradise?
Yeah.
Where?
What do you mean?
The Jews claim that.
And also, the Quran does say in that surah.
What do you mean? Where? I don't understand.
Where do the Jews say they will go to paradise? A Jew does not believe in paradise.
The Jews do claim Jesus is the Messiah.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Okay.
Now we're going crazy.
This guy's going mad now. No one claims.
The Jews are waiting for the Messiah. They're still waiting today.
Wrong. No, 1 second. Don't try to mix.
It says we slayed the Messiah, but we crucified him not. So they say the Jews make the boast, which is where the Quran makes the claim that Jesus was not executed. But the Jews say we slayed the Messiah. So that in that surah, they're making the claim that Jesus is the Messiah. Your Quran.
What is this guy saying?
Jews have a physical paradise.
The Quran does not make the claim that. The Quran is basically saying
the claim is here that you are saying that the Jews are saying we will go to paradise.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm just saying, is that a fact? Do Jews have a physical paradise? No, they don't have a physical paradise.
He didn't say nothing about physical there. Stop trying to add verses and trying to put. So stop doing that. So the brother made a claim.
No, it's a different paradise. This is the whole point. Christians and Muslims believe in a physical paradise. Jews don't.
No. Okay, you have to understand from the perspective of a Muslim. Both the Torah and
No,
Injil
I have to understand from a perspective of a Jew, because the claim here is regarding Jews.
Yeah, Jews. So the Orthodox Jews at the time of Moses did believe in paradise, but we as Muslims believe their Torah have been corrupted. So what the Quran says takes precedence. The Quran is the Muhammad, so it takes precedence over both books. So you have to understand the claim of the Quran. You can't just try to misconstrue and try to conflate between the Torah, the Injil, and the Quran.
You can't just make up things and say, well, it says somewhere that something is corrupted, and I have just decided that that point is corrupted.
Yeah, 100%.
That the Jews suddenly are totally wrong, that they don't believe, they should believe in a paradise because I have decided that they should.
They do. There's a sect that don't believe in paradise. Isn't it Talmud? If you actually read the Talmud, there's a slight reference to paradise.
There is no reference to paradise.
I'm talking about the Talmud. So there are certain groups of Jews who actually believe in paradise.
Jews do not believe in a paradise. They don't have this. They have a closeness to their God, to Yahweh. They say if you are closer to Yahweh, but you are not in a paradise. They don't have this concept of paradise.
You're mistaken. The Quran makes a claim. Both the Injil. 1 second. You can start screaming.
No, he's correct. He's correct. There is no concept of paradise according to the Jewish.
Yeah. So the Quran makes the claim both the Injil and the Torah are corrupted. So you have to understand where we're coming from.
We've just read for the past 3 weeks where Muhammad is actually making the claim: go to the book, go to the people of the book, people of the book. He doesn't say.
I wish I was here. But the Quran makes the claim totally. It was
show me where the claim says that the Bible has been corrupted.
I'll show you. I'll show you now. If I show you now, you're gonna shut up.
This is not the point. The point is that it says that the Jews will go to paradise. This is not true. This is a mistake in the Quran.
No, it's not a mistake.
Number two, it says that the Christians will say that they go to paradise. This is correct. So you can't now and say that 113 will explain something in 111 that is a mistaken claim.
Can I reply to this, brother? Because he's trying to, he's regurgitating everything he says again and again.
Because you don't grasp it.
Just be quiet for a second. Does the Quran, from Orthodox position, claim the Torah and the Injil is corrupted? So when
who the fuck cares?
So the Quran is correct then. You're incorrect.
Muhammad, listen here. What I understand stops to be saying is that the Jews do not believe in a paradise. The Quran is making a claim that they do believe in a paradise, and that's where the error is. Because if you can bring up some evidence that shows that the Jews do believe in paradise, then this verse is vindicated. If in fact that's not the case, then this verse is incorrect with regards to the Jews. Am I understanding that correctly, Stops?
Yeah.
I see your position. However, we believe the Orthodox Jews, although we don't have the evidence for it, the Orthodox Jews at the time of Moses did believe in paradise.
Okay, but if you don't have evidence for it, Muhammad, how can you make the claim?
Because the Quran is making the claim. This is the creator that's making the claim.
But hang on, Muhammad. You can't just accept what the Quran says without bringing the evidence.
Why
if you're
not?
going to do that, everybody can do that with their own book and we get nowhere. So the Quran is a book of claims. You require the evidence to substantiate the claim. Do you understand that?
I see where you're coming from.
Hang on, but I see where you come from. Did you see what you just did? You told me that I'm not allowed to say here in the physical paradise. I entered the word physical to explain it. What you have just done, you've said, but the Orthodox Jews, something that you have just told me I should not do, you are now doing by entering the word Orthodox. We're not talking about Orthodox Jews.
And it doesn't say the word Orthodox there anyway. It just says a Jew. So here's the thing for you, Muhammad. You can go away and do it. If you can bring a source that suggests that the Jews believed in a paradise, then we can have that discussion. At the moment, you're claiming that they do. And Sydney, who I think was a Jew, and I think Stops and Thunderous are saying, no, they do not believe in paradise.
Okay, so you take from Rabbi, isn't it? So the Talmud, it also takes from the Talmud, correct?
Presumably the Jews do.
Yeah, so if you get evidence from the Talmud, then it's okay.
The Talmud is for the unorthodox, the normal, proper, if you like, what should be the Orthodox Jews should go from Genesis to Malachi. Then you got another band of Jews that go by the Talmud.
No. The Torah itself makes a claim of taking the rabbi's interpretation, just like the Quran makes the interpretation of taking scholarly interpretation.
It doesn't matter.
Jews of the 600s was 500 years before the time of Maimonides.
The reason I keep bringing up the Talmud Jews It's because there is a monumental difference in what they believe, and we find their monumental differences seeping their way with their stories into the Quran.
Yeah, but Muhammad didn't understand that.
And he couldn't.
No, so you're changing subject. Now you're saying the Quran borrowed stories from the the Torah.
Of course it did.
No, that's a lie. That's a lie now.
This is like Judaism 2.0, of course.
You have to be stupid, perverse, or hopelessly ignorant to not know that famous ayah that Muslims keep reciting, that if you kill an innocent, he kills all mankind. If he saved an innocent, he saved all mankind. Its origins are in the Jewish Talmud.
The entire chapter 12.
100%.
So because the Quran makes a similar claim to the Torah, where we believe this was a progressive revelation. One second, you're mistaken.
Half the Quran is copied from the Torah.
See, you like change the subject now. You like totally trying to change the subject.
Hold on a minute.
Okay, let's leave it. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
In heaven, if this book is in heaven and nobody knew what the book said before it came to earth, then how comes it found itself 400 years in a book called the Talmud for 400 years before Muhammad came along and revealed it in the Quran?
Okay, so the Quran, the Torah says believe in the Shama, and we also believe in the Shama in our way. So you're saying we borrow that claim from the Torah and the Injil. You're not making sense here, because we believe in something called progressive revelation. So the Torah and the Injil, we believe it has some truth to it. So the truth that's
but we're not talking about the Torah and the Injil. We're talking about the Talmud, and the Talmud is not inspired by God.
It is according to the what's it called?
Even the Jews.
It's irrelevant, guys. Stop talking about irrelevant stuff. We're
because
talking about whether there's a paradise for the Jews and for the Christians. There's not.
And the Jews, no Jews.
Because he knows the Talmud refused the Christian religion. That's why he's trying to refute it. I see what he's trying to do. Yeah, he totally destroys your religion, man.
That doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, it totally destroys your religion, man. You know
no, it doesn't. No, you totally destroys. You mean this is the same book that even denies the Quran, because it has Jesus not being what you call it, an immaculate conception like the Quran even accepts, but it has
exactly. Listen up.
But it also challenges the Quran, because the Talmud says that he was a bastard offspring of Pantera, and Mary.
Exactly what the Quran. So exactly what the Quran was saying in Surah 113. So both of you claim to follow Torah. However, you have different interpretation. So on the day of judgment,
Rob, we need to go back to 111.
Let me finish now, because every time I try speaking, you like try to cut me off, because you know.
Interpretation.
So exactly what this brother. Yeah. So exactly what the brother said, that the Jews believe in the Torah, the Christians believe in the Torah. However, the Jews come to the assumption that Jesus was not the Messiah, and the Christians do. So what the Quran says, Allah will deal between both of them in the day of judgment. So I don't see any contradiction here. He actually supports the Quran.
Great. Okay, you've made your point. Thank you very much. Let's go to 112. It says here, on the contrary, whoever submits his face to Islam, to Allah, while being a doer of good, will have his reward with his Lord. Now, there's two mistakes here. One mistake is that nobody has been told what a righteous person or a doer of good actually is. And the second thing is, nobody can guarantee that they will have a reward with his Lord, because not even Muhammad. This is why Muslims go crazy with saying Muhammad, peace be, and all sorts of things need to be with him, because they are still trying to make sure that he actually goes to heaven, because we don't know that he will go to heaven. So there's two mistakes here that we need to appreciate.
All right. Before Muhammad responds, Oz, you've been listening there. Do you want to comment on any of this?
Yeah, what I found very interesting actually about the whole thing was how the amount of interpretation that was involved, and then also Muhammad accepting that Jews and Christians also interpreted differently, right? But yet he says that there's a clear objective truth to a religion that he seemingly understands completely. Like that whole discussion undermined that claim. The whole, like, Benny was disagreeing with him. He had different views to me, and we're free Muslims. So how can you say that you know, like, that the Qur'an and everything trying to tell you is objectively factual, and that you
true?
But where do you disagree with what I said, though? Where do you disagree with what I said? You're acting like you disagree with what I said. So I want to know what part, because I made a claim that the Jews and Christians both hold the Torah in a high regard. However, both the interpretation from the upcoming Messiah is totally different. One denies it and one approves of it.
What I find interesting about that is that you acknowledge that religious groups are interpreting something. That for me, that's the bit that's very interesting. You're acknowledging that people that follow religions interpret their religion in different ways. You accept this, right?
Yeah, that's only the Torah and the Injil. The last testament.
What about in
No, the last testament is totally clear and precise because we believe, we have some claims about the Torah and Injil where the rabbis themselves change the words. So there's certain claims that we make. The default position is they change the words and the rabbis interpret it the way they want to fit their agenda. But the Quran has a strong default position where a certain group of people that have been appointed by the Quran itself, which is the Prophet and his companions, have to interpret the Quran.
Yeah, but Jews and Christians also think that sorry, not all of them. Many Jews and Christians also think that they're interpreting what their authority.
Yeah, but Oz, I don't think that's a strong position. I don't think that that's a position you can bring to Muhammad because he's just going to say they were both confused. We've got it right. And I don't think that you pressing that point is going to get anywhere with Muhammad. He is just going to acknowledge that they can be confused, et cetera, but that Muslims, proper quote unquote Muslims, won't be confused. So I'm not sure what the strength of your position is or what you're trying to argue there.
I'm not making.
I guess the strength for okay. I guess this is what I would say to an argument like that, right? If the Qur'an is so clear, and if we can fully understand it objectively, if we follow what the Sahaba do saying, right? Why are there so many different factions of Islam that are so adamant that they're all correct in what they follow? And on top of that, what makes someone like Muhammad, a random person in London somewhere, unique that he has the oracle of truth that no other Muslim faction has managed to grasp? That's where I think that his argument falls apart.
Okay, that's a different argument though, because originally you were making the claim that, hey, look here, these Jews and Christians, they've got different ideas, and you were sort of suggesting that, hey, look at how this thing is subjective, and all Muhammad has to say is, well, hey, yeah, that they are subjective, they've maybe made mistakes, but we've got it right because the book is. But now your argument is, hey, now you're pointing to the reality of the world as we see it, which is it seems to me that's a different point than the first one you were making.
No, bro, you know what it is? I think his position is totally faulty here because he, as a Muslim, has to believe both the Torah and the Injil is a corrupted book. So whatever they're interpreting is corrupted in its sheer nature. But the Quran itself claims that it is protected, and Allah will preserve it himself.
Yeah,
so
but the problem for you, Muhammad, the problem for you is that in reality, that's not what we see in reality. If in fact that was the case, what we would expect to see in this book is that everybody had the same interpretation. There wouldn't be 4 schools. There wouldn't be any difference between you and Oz or Benny or anybody else. But we see exactly the opposite. So the claim you're making is not borne out in reality.
No, there's no difference. You cannot show me any difference between the 4 madhabs in terms of aqidah. What you're going to show me is fiqh issues. Like, can we celebrate this? Can we do X, Y, and Z?
There are differences in aqidah. There are actually.
You have to show me that in terms of aqidah.
So for example, Ibn Taymiyyah, when somebody asked him, how does God descend from the heavens and the earth? You probably follow Ibn Taymiyyah, right?
Yeah, kind of make it.
He said that God descends from the heaven the way that I'm descending right now from my minbar, and then he steps down as if to say God literally descends as a human descends. There are other majority of Malikis are Ash'aris. So from an Aqidah perspective, they would say that God's hand isn't the same as a human hand, and God descending isn't the same as a human descending. So there are Aqidah issues as well. It's not just fiqh.
No, I'm talking about ijma', like consensus. I'm not. You can't. One second. You cannot pick me. You cannot pick Ibn Taymiyyah like a blind follow Ibn Taymiyyah. Like I accept everything that he says. I don't do that. So you have to give me an ijma' about aqidah.
You're assuming there's an ijma', and there isn't. There isn't an ijma'. There's no consensus. That's what I'm trying to tell you. How many madhabs are there? How many schools of aqidah are there? There is no. We're not like the Catholic religion where we have like a pope in the Vatican, and like there is no ijma'. In your mind, there is. What is the consensus in your view? Who are the majority Muslims in your opinion? And I will check the data and I'll check their population. We can verify this right now.
Are you claiming the majority are in truth? The Quran makes the claim that the majority are not always in the truth.
You said the ijma' say so and so. So you say the majority. I've not said that argument. You've made that argument.
I know. I said to you, there's ijma'. You know what ijma' means? It doesn't mean a majority.
It does in Arabic. I'm an Arab. I'm fluent in Arabic. Ijma' means the majority congregation in Arabic. That's where the word jama'a comes from. I know Arabic.
You're incorrect, yeah.
I'm not incorrect. I'm an Arab. I speak Arabic fluently. Ijma' means the majority.
No, it means consensus.
Yes, the majority consensus. Ijma'.
Yeah, in terms of what? in terms of people, like the majority of Muslims, like there's 1.8 billion Muslims. Not the 1.6 billion Muslims don't have to come together to make an ijma. You have to be certain group of head leaders have to come together to make an ijma. That's what I'm trying to say to you. You don't have to be the majority in terms of the Muslim population.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from UK.
Okay, well, you're probably not Arab because you wouldn't have said what you said, right?
No, ijma means consensus, 100%.
Objectively, the word ijma in the Arabic language means majority consensus.
No, you're talking about linguistics. I'm talking about Shari'an. So you're trying to say it 1 second now. So you're saying in terms of Islamically, consensus, ijma means majority of people. So you're saying there's 1.8 billion Muslims in the world here.
Yeah.
At one point, so the majority, like 1.6 billion, have to come together to get an ijma. That's totally incorrect, man.
No, I'm simply saying that you refer to the ijma for authority. In Arabic, the ijma means the majority consensus. Now, what I'm saying to you is that there is no majority consensus. Look at how many Shias and how many Sunnis.
Shias are kuffar, man.
Okay, then you get Sunnis, hang on, wait, hold up. Then you get Sunnis, and then you look at how many are Maliki, Shafis, Hanafis, and Hanbalis, and then you look at how many were parts of madhabs that don't exist, and how many aren't in madhabs, and then you get whatever, you're probably a Hanbali or a Hanafi, then you look at their aqidah, are they Ash'ari, are they Maturidi, are they Mu'tazili? There is no ijma'. You will find it
totally wrong, man. Wallahi.
Guys, I think we're going to stray. You can do this in an after show. We'll go to an after show for those that want to stay on and do this. But I think we're coming up to 11 o'clock now. We've been on for 3 hours. You're more than welcome to come back next week, and we'll continue with 113. But we'll go to an after show for those who want to. Otherwise, this will just continue on and on. But I don't want to have the show go longer than 3 hours. So let's hold it there for now. I want to thank everybody that's been in the panel. We'll each have a quick say before we finish. So let's do that now quickly. So Sydney, you've been very quiet here. Then we'll go to Thunderous. So Stops, if you can just get the hadith ready for the day, and then we'll go to an after show, I think, and we'll carry from there. So Sydney, you've been listening. Just give us a broad view of what your thoughts are. You're welcome back again, by the way, if you wish.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been pretty much like watching a fiction book review club meeting. Very entertaining. There's no substance to anything that is being claimed in these passages. It's huge claims can be dismissed with no evidence, as much as small claims can be, and there's just no evidence for anything other than underlining to me that this is all just stuff written by some guy, some guy wrote this. The divinity of it all to me is non-debatable. It's ridiculous.
Well, presumably the Muslims could actually bring some resources, which again they can do for next week if they wish, if they want to come on again. I appreciate that. Thunderous, your last word on the live show, and then obviously we'll go to an after show. Then we'll give the two Muslims, and then Stops will do a closing for the day. Go ahead, Thunderous.
Considering that 2/3, if not 3/4, of the conversation discussion this evening was about prayer, I think if anybody was to play back the recording tonight, watch it on YouTube, and just listen to that discussion in itself, would draw the conclusion that the majority of people would draw from Islam about prayer, that it is just a set of perfunctory rules and regulations that do not allow for free will, that do not allow for an interpersonal relationship or expression, but nothing more than a set prequoter of salutations and a transcript of repetition, including repetition in posture and repetition in direction. It is what it is, parrot fashion.
Good, thank you. Mohammed, do you want to say something? And then we'll move on to Oz, and then we'll finish off with Stops. Mohammed, are you there?
Yeah. So okay. I wasn't on in the beginning.
So you have your final word here now, and then we'll go to an after show.
Yeah. So because you are saying the majority of the show was about prayers, just want to make the conclusion that the Quran specifically, unambiguously makes a claim that that there are 5 prayers in the Quran. And to get onto the point where the people say the Quran is ambiguous, that's a total lie. The Quran is precise and concise in his words. That's all I was going to say, because I was just on the show for the last 20 minutes.
Okay, good. Thank you. You can always continue it afterwards. Oz, your closing statement for the live show?
My biggest problem with the entire conversation was this ridiculous view that a human being who lives maximum 80 years, that defecates in the toilet, that dies of illness, some random human in the middle of Britain somehow has a shining light on something that hundreds of thousands of people have been fighting wars over for thousands of years, for hundreds of years. That is just ridiculous. That's completely stupid, man. It's like, it's a complete overstatement of intellect, completely.
Good, thank you so much. Stops, can you just finish us off with a hadith of the day, please?
Yeah, but we all know that British Pakistanis understand Arabic much better than native Arab speakers, definitely. I like that. Okay, the hadith is one, of course, people are going to say, no, this is not real, and this is fabricated. This hadith is related by Ahmad, Abu Dawud, At-Tamiri, Ibn Maya, Ibn Al-Fat, Ibn Hajar, and the chain is considered to be Sahih. And it's authenticated by Albani.
What is
Ali narrated, sorry?
What's the reference, or the book number or whatever?
So
people who want to go and look it up afterwards.
No, I forgot.
No, we've got to have references, Stops. Otherwise people could accuse us of, or you, of cherry picking or making stuff up. We don't want that.
This is from a viewer, from a fan, and I did not go and take it. I just entered it, and it said, yes, this is it. And I took the information. This hadith is related by Abu da-da-da-da-dam. That's all I have.
All right, I guess we can copy and paste it into the internet. Can you put it in the side chat there for a moment? And then I'll put it into the main chat, because that gets recorded anyway. So just put it in the side chat or the main chat, so that people, if they want to go and look it up, can go and copy and paste this and put it into the internet to make sure that, in fact, it's a genuine hadith.
Okay, so it says, Ali narrated, the Messenger of Allah said that the urine of a baby boy should have water sprinkled upon it. The urine of a baby girl is to be washed off. This refers to a male baby that has not yet begun to eat. If he already eats, then the garment is to be washed. That is because the urine of the boy is only water and clay, but the urine of the girl is flesh and blood. Then he said to me, did you understand? I said, no. He said, when Allah the Most High created Adam, he created Hawa from his short rib. So the boy's urine is from water and clay, and the girl's urine is from flesh and blood. Then he said to me, did you understand? I said, yes. He said, may Allah cause you to benefit from this.
Good. Thank you very much for that. So, again, thank you to everybody on the panel. We'll go to an after show. I'll post the link in a moment. We'll be back again next Friday, carrying on from verse 114. If any other panelists want to join us, you're welcome to do so. With that said, thank you very much. And we will be back next Friday, 8 p.m.